Chapter 31-36. Decided to go deeper after retrieving the Ho-E divine arrow. Zhuo-in jumped down from the cliff and slowly walked towards Jiang Yi and Mei Su. He said indifferently, "You're already here. Are you going to give up, just like that?" Jiang Yi looked at Zhuo-in strangely and said, "Brother Zhuo, you're not thinking of going deeper, are you? You've seen it for yourself. 2/3 of the Death Canyon is already so terrifying. I'm afraid." At this point, Jiang Yi shook his head. Obviously, he felt that the deepest part of the Death Canyon was too terrifying. Zhuo-in knew what Jiang Yi was thinking and did not continue on this topic. He knew that Jiang Yi was frightened by the devil apes. "Then, do you know the exact location of the jade or vein in the depths of the Death Canyon?" Zhuo-in asked. Jiang Yi shook his head and said, "Miss Mei Su only sensed the approximate location of the jade or vein. We don't know the exact location. If I can enter the depths of the Death Canyon, I can pinpoint the exact location of the jade or vein. Unfortunately, I can't." Mei Su pouted. Zhuo-in's eyes flickered and said, "Miss Mei Su, I can guarantee that I can enter the depths of the Death Canyon. If you can come with me, we'll split the jade or vein equally. How about it?" As soon as he said this, Jiang Yi immediately objected. "No, the depths of the Death Canyon are too dangerous. Miss Mei Su is the daughter of our Hongxian Divine City Lord. How can you put yourself in danger? And Brother Zhuo, you can't even guarantee your own safety. Aren't you being too irresponsible by asking Miss Mei Su to go with you?" Jiang Yi's tone was agitated. He pulled Mei Su to his side and looked at Zhuo-in cautiously. Zhuo-in was surprised and looked at Mei Su again. He did not expect this cute little loli to have such a noble identity. She was the daughter of the Hongxian Divine City Lord. If other people from the Slaughter Heaven region heard of Mei Su's identity, they would definitely be afraid. It was a pity that Zhuo-in didn't feel much about it. More accurately, he didn't have much of an idea of what a city lord was. Of course, given Zhuo-in's personality, even if he knew how terrifying the God City was, he still wouldn't be afraid. "Uncle Jiang, you don't have to be so agitated. Am I not asking for Miss Mei Su's opinion? If she doesn't agree, I won't force her. When the time comes, I'll go in alone to take a look. Maybe I'll find something." Zhuo-in shrugged helplessly. This Jiang Yi was simply guarding against him like a cat protecting its cub, and this caused him to be slightly speechless. Jiang Yi heaved a sigh of relief. He was most afraid that Zhuo-in would forcefully bring Mei Su into the depths of Death Canyon. After all, Zhuo-in's strength was very strange and unpredictable. Someone who could defeat a group of devil apes was definitely stronger than him. If Zhuo-in really used force, Jiang Yi might not be able to block Zhuo-in. Brother Zhuo, it's impossible for our miss to follow you into the depths of the canyon. That's simply courting death. You better give up." "Oh, right. I advise you not to try to enter the canyon. It's too dangerous. Compared to your life, the jade or vein is not worth mentioning." Jiang Yi shook his head and tried to persuade Zhuo-in. Unfortunately, Mei Su's words immediately made his body stiffen. Mei Su broke free from Jiang Yi and came to Zhuo-in. She said excitedly, "Brother Zhuo, are you sure you can enter the depths of the canyon? If you are, you must bring me along." Jiang Yi stared blankly at Mei Su. Zhuo-in glanced at the stunned Jiang Yi and immediately said to the excited Mei Su, "Miss Mei Su, you trust me so much? I think you already know how dangerous the depths of the canyon are." "I know, but I trust Brother Zhuo more. You're so powerful. If you say you're sure, then you must be sure." Mei Su's eyes lit up and her voice was soft. Jiang Yi hurriedly said, "Miss, you mustn't. Brother Zhuo's strength is indeed not bad, but the dangers in the depths of the canyon are beyond our imagination. It's said that there are masters of heaven-level killing beasts in there. If there really is such a killing beast, even the city lord himself might not be able to escape." Mei Su pouted and said, "Uncle Jiang, you're too timid. Masters of heaven-level killing beasts have never appeared in so many years. Even if Death Canyon is famous for its ferocity, there might not be a killing beast of this level. Also, didn't you see Brother Zhua's strength just now? That devil ape leader had the strength of a peak master of creation, but it was still killed by Brother Zhua. I'll be safe with him. Zhuowen glanced at Mei Su. Ever since he saved this little girl, she seemed to have blind worship for him. Jiang Yi was speechless. He sighed lightly and took a step forward to Mei Su. He stretched out his right hand, intending to forcefully pull Mei Su back. Unfortunately, Jiang Ye's right hand was blocked by another palm. Boom! A terrifying energy ripple spread out, causing Jiang Yi to groan and retreat. He raised his head and looked at Zhuowen with fear in his eyes. He said in a deep voice, Brother Zhua, what is the meaning of this? Miss Mei Su is the daughter of our city lord. If anything happens to her in Death Canyon, you will be punished and hunted down by our Hongxian divine city. Uncle Jiang, I said that I won't force Miss Mei Su. I have already asked for her opinion, and she has agreed. Zhuowen's voice was calm as he continued. Also, I solemnly declare that I will be responsible for Miss Mei Su's safety unless I die. Humph, I don't believe your promise. Unless you kill me today, I will not let Miss Mei Su follow you into the depths of the canyon. Jiang Yi snorted coldly and took a step forward with his right foot. The spear in his hand shot out, bringing with it a terrifying gale and an ear-piercing roar. In an instant, it was in front of Zhuowen. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and stretched out his right hand, using the fate space-time annihilation. A purple river swept out and swept away Jiang Ye's spear. Within the range of the river, space-time was distorted. Jiang Ye's movements became very slow at this moment. Zhuowen took a step forward and slammed his palm on Jiang Ye's chest. Jiang Yi spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face was extremely pale. Uncle Jiang, your injuries are too serious. Moreover, your body doesn't have much heavenly energy left. You are no match for me in your current state. Zhuowen kept the purple river and shook his head as he looked at Jiang Yi, who was in a terrible state. I said that I will not let you take Miss Mei Su away today. Jiang Ye's eyes were filled with unwillingness. He puffed out his chest and continued to walk towards Zhuowen. Uncle Jiang, I order you not to fight. Moreover, you must listen to my orders from now on. Mei Su suddenly stood in front of Jiang Yi and took out a white token from his cuff. Chapter 30:137. Lunatic Jiang Yi stopped in his tracks and looked at the white token in Mei Su's hand. His face turned ugly. Young miss, this Hongxian command token was given to you by the city lord. Use it to forcefully control all the armies in Hongxian God City in times of crisis. This token is equivalent to the city lord himself. You can only use it once, but you actually used it now. Jiang Ye's eyes were filled with disbelief as he stared at the token in Mei Su's hand. His voice was trembling. Mei Su sighed. Uncle Jiang, I'm not young anymore. I can make my own decisions. You've always treated me like a child. How can I grow up? I was forced to do this. Jiang Yi lowered his head and smiled bitterly. Young miss, you're right. I've meddled too much. When he spoke up to hear, Jiang Yi suddenly raised his head and looked at Zhuowen as he said, Brother Zhua, I'll go with you into the depths of the gorge this time. Zhuowen flatly refused. In Zhuowen's opinion, Jiang Yi and Mei Su were burdens. After all, they couldn't recover their heavenly energy in the Slaughter Heaven region, and their strength would be greatly reduced. Moreover, Jiang Yi had suffered serious injuries. Other than being a burden, they would only be a burden. On the other hand, he was different. He could continuously draw out large amounts of heavenly Tao origin crystals from the outside world to recover. Jiang Yi, on the other hand, would only consume even more heavenly Tao origin crystals. Moreover, he would have to pay more attention to Jiang Yi. Moreover, taking heavenly law origin crystals from the outside world was a secret. The fewer people who knew about it, the better. He didn't want Jiang Yi to go with him. Jiang Yi was furious. Just as he was about to refute, Mei Su said, "Uncle Jiang, listen to Brother Zhuo. I believe he won't harm us." Jiang Yi was helpless. Now that Mei Su had the Hongxian token, he had no choice but to listen to her. After dealing with Jiang Yi, Zhuowen rang the bronze bell. Soon, Xiong Fei arrived with a group of beast men. When Xiong Fei and the others saw the cavalry led by Jiang Yi, they were stunned. They stopped in their tracks and didn't dare to move forward. To them, the divine city was like an unreachable god. To them, the divine city cavalry was even more distant. Therefore, the moment they saw the divine city cavalry, they subconsciously lowered their heads and did not dare to approach. Zhuowen looked at Xiong Fei and the others in amusement and waved his hand, indicating for them to come over. Xiong Fei carefully came to Zhuowen's side and said in a low voice, "Master Zhuo, what is going on? Did you offend the God City's cavalry? They're all on our side. There's no need to offend them." Zhuowen laughed, but Xiong Fei was frightened until he trembled and hurriedly said in a low voice, "Lord Zhuo, I know that your strength is formidable, but you can't talk big in front of the divine city's powerhouses either." The leader was obviously an expert with a high position in the divine city. How can we be compared to him? Zhuowen shook his head inwardly and ignored Xiong Fei, who was on tenterhooks. Instead, he turned to Jiang Yi and said, "Uncle Jiang, these people are from the Flowing Cloud tribe. This is the chief of the Flowing Cloud tribe, Xiong Fei. While I'm in the valley, all of you stay here and collect the jade stones from the devil ape's corpse. I will set up a creation-grade defensive formation here. This formation will be able to block off any killing beasts below the level of Master Tongtian." After Zhuowen finished speaking, he secretly took out the beast bone disc array and walked to the edge of the area. In a radius of 5 miles, he drew the outline of a formation. After using the beast bone disc array to set up the base of the formation, Zhuowen did not use the Heavenly Way origin crystal this time. Instead, he used the jade stones collected by Xiong Fei and the others to set up the base of the formation, completely completing the defensive formation. Creation-grade defensive formation? You're a creation-grade formation godmaster? Jiang Yi was completely shocked. His heart was filled with disbelief. However, after seeing that Zhuowen had really set up a creation-grade defensive formation, he was speechless. "Brother Zhuo, you're awesome. Other than being powerful, you're actually so terrifying in terms of formation Dao. Even our Hongxian Divine City doesn't have a single creation-grade formation god master. If my mother sees you, she will definitely be overjoyed." Mei Su was stunned. Soon after, her beautiful eyes were filled with even more admiration. "Miss Mei Su, how's your recovery? If you haven't recovered, we can rest here for a period of time." After setting up the defensive formation, Zhuowen came to Mei Su and asked. Mei Su shook her head and said, "There's no need for that. The divine pill that Brother Zhuo gave me just now was too effective. After consuming the divine pill, most of my divine soul has recovered. Let's set off now." Zhuowen carefully sized up Mei Su. After confirming that she had indeed recovered well, he nodded and led Mei Su out of the defensive formation. Looking at Zhuowen and Mei Su's silhouettes, Jiang Yi was a little dejected. He muttered softly, "Miss, you must return safely. Otherwise, how am I going to explain this to the city lord when I return to the divine city?" "Sir, are the two of them going deep into the valley?" Xiong Fei cautiously approached Jiang Yi and asked in a soft voice. Jiang Yi glanced at Xiong Fei. The dejected aura on his body dissipated and was replaced by a dignified aura. "I heard from Zhuowen that you are the chief of the Flowing Cloud tribe. Moreover, Zhuowen seems to have a good relationship with you. Is Zhuowen from your tribe?" Jiang Yi looked at Xiong Fei and asked. Xiong Fei quickly shook his head and said, "Sir Zhuo is not from our Flowing Cloud tribe. I heard that he is a newcomer who has just entered the Slaughter Heaven domain. He does not belong to any faction in the slaughter heaven domain. Why do you want to enter the Death Valley? It's not like you don't know how terrifying the Death Valley is. Jiang Yi calmly asked. We don't want to. The main reason is that Sir Zhuo wants to enter the Death Valley to hunt for more emerald stones, Xiong Fei said helplessly. Why does he want so many emerald stones? Jiang Yi asked. It seems that he wants to enter the Divine City. Large tribes are qualified to recommend a person to enter the Divine City. However, the recommendation requires a hefty price of 10,000 emerald stones. Our tribe only has a little over 3,000 emerald stones. Sir Zhuo wants to obtain emerald stones quickly, so he came to the Death Valley to hunt for slaughter beasts. Xiong Fei said, He really is a madman. He is not afraid of death at all. Jiang Yi held his forehead. This Zhuowen is too crazy. In order to obtain emerald stones quickly, he did not care about his life at all. But soon, Jiang Yi felt suspicious. He had already invited Zhuowen to enter the Divine City. In other words, if he entered the Hongxian Divine City now, there was no need for him to collect emerald stones. Chapter 3138. Deep in the Death Canyon, the canyon was pitch black and eerily silent. The sound of footsteps colliding with the ground was eerie and horrifying in the empty canyon. Mei Su stuck close to Zhuowen as her beautiful eyes scanned the surroundings nervously. Zhuowen did not walk fast. His muscles were tense as he was constantly alert of his surroundings. He was very surprised. He had left Jiang Yi and the others for more than 2 hours and was slowly approaching the deepest part of the canyon. However, he did not encounter any danger along the way. His surroundings were eerily quiet. Big brother Zhuo, what do you need so many jade stones for? If we can find the jade stone vein this time, we will need a lot of manpower and resources to mine it. You alone might not be enough. Perhaps Mei Su felt that the surroundings were too quiet, so she opened her mouth to break the silence. I do need a lot of jade stones now. As for what they are used for, this is a secret. As for mining, I have my own considerations. Zhuowen smiled. His purpose in entering the Death Canyon was to quickly accumulate jade stones by hunting beasts. After accumulating 10,000 jade stones, he would ask the Drifting Cloud tribe to recommend him to enter the Hongxian Divine City. However, after meeting Mei Su and Jiang Yi, entering the God City became easier than eating a meal for him. He did not need to deliberately collect jade stones. The reason he wanted to find the jade stones hidden in the depths of the canyon was mainly for the mysterious stone. Since absorbing the jade stones of the Tian-Yi tribe, the mysterious stone seemed to have been enlightened. He guessed that the mysterious stone had been in a deep slumber before, but the jade stones could awaken it. Of course, although the mysterious stone could move now, he could feel that it had not fully awakened. Moreover, the mysterious stone's desire for jade stones was getting stronger. Most of the jade stones collected by Xiong Fei and the others were kept in Zhuowen's macro world. Originally, he wanted to use these jade stones to enter the Divine City. Since Jiang Yi had promised to let him enter the Divine City, he did not need to keep them. Therefore, he gave all the jade stones in the macro world to the mysterious stone. The mysterious stone cheered and absorbed all the jade stones in the macro world. After absorbing all the jade, the mysterious stone was still not satisfied. It wanted to absorb even more jade. This shocked Zhuowen. He had thousands of jade stones in his great world, and they had all been absorbed by the mysterious stone. However, the mysterious stone was not satisfied. Zhuowen knew that if he wanted to satisfy this mysterious stone, he would need a large amount of jade stones. Mei Su had mentioned that there was a jade or vein in the depths of the canyon, which was perfect for the mysterious stone to absorb. Zhuowen had a premonition that if he could let the mysterious stone absorb enough energy, it would be able to reveal the true face of the stone. When Mei Su saw that Zhuowen didn't want to talk about it, she could only give an "oh," and didn't want to talk about it any further. She had entered the Death Canyon for the jade stone vein, and she had no doubts about Zhuowen's strength. That was why she was willing to point out the exact location of the jade stone vein for Zhuowen and go deep into the Death Canyon. The two of them traveled through the canyon for a period of time. Finally, they felt that something was wrong. Along the way, the canyon was too quiet. They didn't even see a trace of a killer beast. All of this was very strange. We have reached the deepest part of the canyon. Zhuowen stopped and looked at the towering rock wall in front of him. This was the end of the canyon. Apart from this rock wall, there was nothing else around them. Not even a trace of a killer beast could be seen. Miss Meisu, can you sense the location of the jade stone vein now? A trace of haze flashed in Zhuowen's eyes. He felt that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he couldn't tell. He could only ask Meisu about the location of the jade stone vein. Meisu's 3 furry tails swayed gently. Her pair of beautiful eyes looked around as she observed the surrounding environment. Soon, her eyes locked on to the front left. There stood an irregular stone pillar that was half the height of a person. Brother Zhua, the jade stone vein should be under this stone pillar. Meisu came to the front of the stone pillar. A trace of excitement flashed in her beautiful eyes. Be careful! Zhuowen shouted and took a step forward. He grabbed Meisu's jade-like hand and forcefully pulled her over. Meisu screamed and jumped into Zhuowen's arms. Her eyes fell on the stone pillar. She found that the stone pillar had turned into a giant python covered in rocks. To be more precise, the stone pillar was the giant python in disguise. The giant python's body was as thick as a bucket. Its huge head opened its scarlet eyes and stared at Zhuowen. Its mouth was wide open, as if it was angry at Zhuowen for being a busybody. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. The giant python's aura was very strong. It had the strength of an early-stage creator. Zhuowen naturally didn't care about such strength. What he was concerned about was that there might be more than one rock python in the deepest part of the Death Canyon. Whoosh! The giant python hissed and shot out like a spring. It swept toward Zhuowen. A fishy wind swept over. You're courting death. Zhuowen grunted coldly as his right hand emitted a crystalline and translucent glow, and he suddenly stretched out his hand to grab the enormous python that flashed over. The power of the Pangu sacred body poured out. The giant python screamed, and its head was crushed by Zhuowen's palm. Big brother Zhua, look, there's a cave where the giant python was just now, Meisu suddenly said. Only then did Zhuowen notice that the place Meisu had pointed out was indeed a cave that led to the depths of the underground. The size of the cave was just enough to accommodate a person. The giant python coiled its body and covered the cave, so they didn't notice it for a while. Go in. The moment the cave appeared, Zhuowen immediately carried Meisu, who didn't know what was going on, and rushed into the cave. The moment Zhuowen entered the cave, he immediately took out the array disc he had prepared from the Great World and placed it at the entrance of the cave. The array disc was set up by Zhuowen before he entered the Death Canyon. It was a peak creator-level defensive array. He had spent a lot of effort to set it up. Bang! 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 The moment Zhuowen placed the array disc at the entrance of the cave, a series of crashing sounds came from the entrance. It was as if there were countless creatures installed on the array disc. If Zhuowen and Meisu saw the scene outside the cave, they would definitely feel their scalps go numb. The rocks on both sides of the cave, which was 10 kilometers away, were squirming. Then giant pythons with scarlet eyes appeared one after another. These giant pythons were exactly the same as the giant pythons Zhuowen had just killed. Zhuowen didn't expect that the walls on both sides of the canyon were actually the giant pythons in disguise. Roar! Chapter 30:139. King Snake Rumble. The rock walls on both sides collapsed with a loud rumble. Then an unprecedentedly terrifying giant python rushed out from the rock walls on both sides. The size of these two giant pythons far exceeded the countless wriggling pythons around them. Each python was thousands of feet long, and their surface was as hard as a rock. especially their necks. They had huge semicircular wings on their backs, making them look like larger versions of king cobras. The appearance of these two pythons silenced all the other rock pythons in the valley. They stopped squirming and lay on the ground, motionless as a sign of submission. These two pythons were clearly the leaders of the countless rock pythons. They were the true king snakes. Hiss! The two king snakes walked side by side, and the rock pythons in front of them made way for them. Finally, the two king snakes arrived at the entrance of the cave that Zhuowen had entered. At the entrance, there was a sparkling stream of light. It was the creation-grade defensive array that Zhuowen had set up the moment he entered the cave. Around the stream of light, there were bloodstains and many rock pythons' corpses. It was clear that many rock pythons had crashed into the array the moment they tried to drill into the cave. Their heads were broken and bleeding, and some had even died. The two king snakes stopped at the entrance of the cave, and their scarlet eyes stared at the stream of light. Rumble! One of the king snakes dashed out, and its huge head collided with the stream of light. Suddenly, the stream of light fluctuated violently, but the king snake's head, which was covered with hard scales, remained unscathed. The king snake raised its head, and the other king snake dashed out like lightning, also using its head to attack the array. Bang! 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 Next, the two king snakes took turns attacking. The array shook violently, and the stream of light on the surface of the array began to dim. Inside the cave, on the other side of the array, Zhuowen and Mei Su's faces were not looking good. The aura of these two king snakes is terrifying. It's even more terrifying than the devil ape leader. Are these two king snakes Skirich master killer beasts? Mei Su's pretty face was pale as she asked worriedly. These two king serpents are not transcending heaven-slaying beasts, but half-step transcending heaven-slaying beasts. However, the two of them are extremely well-coordinated. If the two of them were to attack together, they would definitely be able to fight against an early-stage heavenly master. Zhuowen's eyes were gloomy. These two king snakes were very difficult to deal with. Moreover, if they continued to bombard the array like this, the array wouldn't be able to last much longer. Brother Zhuowen, what should we do now? Mei Su asked nervously as she looked at Zhuowen. Don't worry, so what if the formation is broken? It's just two half-step heaven-span king snakes. They can't do anything to me. Let's go deeper and find the jade or vein first. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. With his strength, he was indeed not afraid of killing beasts that were half a step into the heavenly path. In addition, he could replenish heavenly path energy at any time. Even if he were to face those two king serpents head-on, Zhuowen would not be afraid. Mei Su looked at Zhuowen's calm eyes. For some reason, she felt at ease. She nodded gently and looked at the dark passage below. She said with certainty, Brother Zhuo, the jade or vein is below. I can feel that the jade or vein below is very large. It's definitely a million-grade jade or vein. Okay, then let's go down. Zhuowen pulled Mei Su and went straight into the depths of the cave. They kept going down, completely ignoring the king snakes that were still bombarding the array. The two of them went all the way down. After about an hour, they reached the end of the passage. Walking out of the passage, Zhuowen found that they were in a huge, open space. The surroundings were emitting a green light. He looked around and narrowed his eyes. He clearly saw the source of the green light. It was emitted by the jade ores embedded in the surrounding rock walls. These jade ores were completely different from the jade ores inside the bodies of the killing beasts. The surface was extremely rough and was basically made up of dozens or even hundreds of jade ores stuck together. Moreover, the surface was covered by rocks. Zhuowen looked ahead and found that there was a huge and spacious passage ahead. The passage was very deep and he couldn't see the end. On both sides of the passage, there were countless jade ores that were emitting a mysterious green light. Someone must have mined this passage. However, the goal of the person who mined it wasn't the jade ores, but something in the depths of this passage. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this passage was man-made. Moreover, the jade ores in the surroundings were basically untouched. He had many guesses in his mind. This is definitely the largest jadestone mine I've ever seen. I really didn't expect that there would be such a large jadestone mine in Death Canyon. If our Hongxian Divine City could obtain this jadestone mine, then Mother wouldn't have to worry about the lack of jadestone. Mei Su looked at the jade ores that were emitting a green light. Her beautiful eyes were filled with unprecedented joy. Zhuowen took out the beast bone array disc and set up a creation-grade defensive array at the end of the passage. Zhuowen had observed the surrounding soil. It was obviously much tougher than the soil in Death Valley. Even if the two king serpents above attacked with all their might, they might not be able to destroy the soil. In addition, the passage leading to the bottom was too narrow. The two king serpents definitely wouldn't be able to enter. Only the small rock pythons would be able to enter. The small rock pythons were ordinary in strength. It was unlikely that they would be able to break through the creation-grade defensive array that he had just set up. Let's go. Let's take a look ahead. Zhuowen's eyes were solemn. He pulled Mei Su and walked deeper into the passage. Not long after Zhuowen left, piles of rock pythons swarmed over from the end of the passage like rain. However, these rock pythons were quickly blocked by the defensive array at the end of the passage. They piled up in the passage like a black torrent. 2/3 of Death Valley, Jiangyi, Xiongfei, and the others had noticed the two king serpents the moment they appeared. Although they were quite far from the depths, the two king serpents were too big. They couldn't help but notice them. What terrifying killing beasts! Are these two king serpents monsters at the level of heaven reaching master? Xiongfei's pupils shrank. The moment he saw the killing beasts, he trembled. His knees went soft, and he almost knelt down. Jiang Ye's eyes were full of worry. He knew that these two terrifying king serpents must have been lured out by Zhuowen and Mei Su. He didn't care about Zhuowen's safety at all. He only cared about Mei Su's safety. However, Jiang Yi didn't dare to rush over. The two king serpents were even more terrifying than the devil ape leader. He would be courting death if he went over. Suddenly, the two king serpents turned their heads and looked at Jiang Yi. Immediately, one of the king serpents darted over like lightning, intending to kill them all. Run! Chapter 3140. Crimson Moon Wave Milk the King Snake was very fast. In less than 10 breaths of time, it had covered 1/3 of the canyon. Bang! However, the moment the king snake reached 2/3 of the canyon, it immediately crashed into the defensive array. The king snake was dizzy from the impact, and its huge snake body was pushed back by the recoil. Let's go. We can't stay here for long. At this moment, Jiang Yi and the rest had already escaped to the edge of the array. Seeing that the array had blocked the king snake, they were delighted. However, they did not dare to delay and fled with all their might. After the king snake had completely destroyed the array, it could no longer see the figures of the foreign races. It was completely enraged. The foreign races that it regarded as ants had actually escaped from under its nose. It could not stand it. Therefore, it suddenly rushed out and chased after them again. This time, it must completely exterminate the foreign races to vent its anger. However, the king serpent had just destroyed a defensive formation when it crashed into another one after flying for a short distance. This time, it crashed even harder. It was so hard that it saw stars and almost fainted. The king snake was furious. It swung its huge tail and spent a lot of effort to destroy the second array. But then, the king snake crashed into the defensive array one after another. In the end, the king snake roared angrily but did not dare to chase after them. It was scared by the array. After Jiang Yi and the others escaped from the canyon, they looked at the pitch-black canyon behind them with fear and trepidation in their hearts. This time it's all thanks to Master Zhuo's array. If it wasn't for those arrays, we might not have been able to come back. Xiongfei sat on the ground. Thinking about the terror of the king snake, he felt a wave of fear. He was even more grateful to Zhuowen. The beastmen behind Xiong Fei nodded, like chicks pecking at rice. After surviving the calamity, they were even more grateful to Zhuowen, who had set up the formation. Jiang Ye's expression was complicated. He approved of Zhuowen's actions in setting up the array. He also had a whole new level of respect for Zhuowen. However, he was very depressed because Mei Su had been tricked by Zhuowen. He did not know whether she was dead or alive. Drip, drip, drip. The clear sound of water dripping could be heard from the front of the tunnel. Zhuowen stopped in his tracks. When he saw the scene in front of him, he was stunned. He and Mei Su walked in the passageway for half a day and finally reached the end of the passageway. At the end of the passageway was a stone chamber that wasn't too small. And in this stone room, the most conspicuous thing was the pool in the center. The pool took up half of the stone room. The pool was filled with milky white liquid. However, the surface of the pool reflected a crimson crescent moon, and around the crescent moon were bright stars. The crescent moon and the surrounding starlight seemed to really be shadows reflected on the pool. But in reality, there was no crescent moon or stars above the pool. The only thing that existed was a milky white stalactite. At the sharp end of the stalactite, there were drops of milky white liquid. Clearly, this pool was formed from the accumulation of these drops of liquid. When Zhuowen saw this strange pool, his pupils shrank to the size of needles, and his body trembled with excitement. "Is this the crimson moon star wave milk?" Zhuowen muttered to himself with an excited expression. The crimson moon star wave milk was a heaven-piercing divine medicine. This milk contained extremely rich heavenly path energy. It was said that directly using the crimson moon star wave milk to cultivate was dozens of times more effective than using a supreme grade heavenly path origin crystal. This showed how precious and powerful the crimson moon star wave milk was. In addition, the crimson moon star wave milk was one of the 6 heaven-piercing divine medicines used to refine the 6 desires spirit-condensing Saint Pill. Mei Su also recognized the crimson moon star wave milk. Her 3 furry tails wagged excitedly. The moment Zhuowen entered the stone room, he immediately felt a terrifying gust of wind sweeping over. This gust of wind contained a powerful suction force. It was like a giant hand pulling Zhuowen to the left and front. Zhuowen's expression changed slightly. He stomped his right foot on the ground, and the power of the Pangu's sacred body erupted. His foot left a deep mark on the ground. Then, Zhuowen reluctantly pulled himself out of the stone room. Mei Su's pretty face changed slightly. She looked at Zhuowen with concern and asked, "Brother Zhuowen, are you okay?" Zhuowen waved his hand, indicating that he was fine. Then his eyes fell on the left side of the stone room near the pool. The strange gust of wind just now had suddenly come from that place. Zhuowen casually pulled a piece of jade from the wall and threw it into the stone room. Then, Zhuowen clearly felt a powerful suction force coming from the stone room. Then he saw a strange whirlpool suddenly appear on the left side of the pool. This whirlpool was not big, only about the size of a palm. A small gust of wind swept out from the whirlpool and swept the jade stone into the whirlpool. Then the whirlpool disappeared, and the stone room returned to normal. Zhuowen's eyes were hazy. He could not see through the whirlpool on the left side of the pool. The gust of wind that swept out from the whirlpool had almost swept him away. If he had not released the power of the Pangu's sacred body, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Zhuowen began to mobilize the power of the Panga banner in his spirit. He planned to use the banner to extend his spirit sense. In the slaughter heavenly domain, spirit sense was forbidden. No one could use it, and Zhuowen was no exception. However, the Panga banner was an exception. It was an item of Pangu, a supreme treasure that had existed since the beginning of the starry sky. If Zhuowen used the power of the Panga banner, his spirit sense could be condensed to a terrifying level. However, it would be very harmful to the spirit. Zhuowen rarely used the Panga banner to condense his spirit sense. But now, the whirlpool on the left side of the Scarlet Moon stellar milk pool gave him a very dangerous feeling. He had to use his soul consciousness to check the situation of the whirlpool. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to enter the stone room to take the Scarlet Moon stellar milk. A golden light flashed between Zhuowen's eyebrows. Then, a gust of spirit sense swept out from between his eyebrows. The moment his spirit sense swept out, Zhuowen pulled out another jade stone from the wall and threw it into the stone room. The whirlpool appeared again, sweeping out the same gust of wind and sweeping the jade stone into the whirlpool. At this moment, Zhuowen's spirit sense shot out like lightning and entered the whirlpool. The moment his spirit sense entered the whirlpool, Zhuowen saw a figure sitting cross-legged inside. The figure was a green skeleton. The green skeleton sat quietly with its legs crossed. Its body contained an ancient and powerful aura that slowly spread out like a sea of clouds. Chapter 30, 141. Epiphany. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with bewilderment. He actually sensed an ancient aura from the green skeleton that was similar to that of the green-furred corpse he encountered in the 8 heavens. This aura was very unique. Only powerful existences that had existed for an extremely long time could emit such an aura. Zhuowen wasn't sure whether the green skeleton had fallen or not. His spiritual sense had entered the whirlpool for too short a time. He had only glanced at it once, so he wasn't able to clearly see the state of the green skeleton. Zhuowen threw another jade stone into the stone room, and the whirlpool appeared again. This time, Zhuowen was familiar with it, and his divine sense penetrated the whirlpool like lightning. Then he rushed toward the green skeleton. When Zhuowen approached the green skeleton, he discovered the source of the strange wind that swept out from the whirlpool. Inside the left sternum of the green skeleton, a green heart was still beating, but it was beating very slowly. Every time the heart beat, a strong wind with a strong suction force swept out. The absorbed jade stones entered the vortex and entered the heart, becoming a part of the heart's energy. Thinking about how he had almost been sucked in by the astral wind, Zhuowen could not help but break out in a cold sweat. If his entire body was sucked into the whirlpool, would he also become a part of this strange heart? As the whirlpool closed, a trace of blood leaked out from the corner of Zhuowen's mouth. His face was pale. With the power of the Panga banner, he had forcibly used his divine will twice, which had caused considerable damage to his divine soul. Brother Zhua, are you all right? Did you use the power of your divine sense just now? Seeing Zhuowen's pale face, Mei Su couldn't help but ask with concern. At the same time, Mei Su recalled the power that had rushed out from Zhuowen's forehead. She was very familiar with that power. It was the power of divine sense. Mei Su couldn't believe it. No one could mobilize their divine sense in the Slaughter Heaven region. Even her mother, who was a master of the sky-reaching realm, couldn't do it. However, this young man was able to do it. At this moment, Mei Su felt that Zhuowen was even more mysterious and powerful, and the worship in her heart grew stronger. I'm fine. Just now, I used a secret method to use the power of my divine sense. However, I had to pay a great price. Zhuowen shook his head and continued, the whirlpool just now was actually a micro-world, and there was a skeleton in that micro-world. That skeleton was very strange. It seemed to be dead, but there was a beating heart in its chest. The astral wind that swept out from the whirlpool was generated by the heart. Brother Zhua, we don't need this Scarlet Moon, stellar starwave milk. The owner of that skeleton is most likely an extremely powerful existence. He might be guarding the Crimson Moon stellar wave milk. Mei Su said, just now, when he accidentally entered the stone room, he immediately discovered that the heavenly energy in the stone room was even denser than the ore tunnel outside, and the source of this pure heavenly energy should be the Crimson Moon stellar wave milk. After all, the Scarlet Moon's stellar starwave milk was a divine medicine that was easier for cultivators to absorb and cultivate than the supreme grade, heavenly path origin crystals. Moreover, Zhuowen guessed that the green skeleton was using the heavenly energy in the stone chamber to restore itself. It should still be in a state of hibernation. Otherwise, the green skeleton wouldn't have been so quiet when he entered the stone chamber. Of course, if Zhuowen didn't know what was good for him and directly entered the stone chamber to remove the pool of Scarlet Moon's stellar starwave milk, he would immediately wake the green skeleton up. Zhuowen guessed that the green skeleton was definitely a master of the sky-reaching realm. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary master of the sky-reaching realm. If this guy really woke up, it would be a disaster for Zhuowen. He might not be able to defeat this green skeleton. Let's get out of here first. That green skeleton isn't simple. We can't wake it up now. Let's mine all the Scarlet Moon stones here first. Zhuowen nodded and led Mei Su out of the stone chamber. Then he waved his right hand and took out a black stone. Mei Su's beautiful eyes were filled with confusion when she saw Zhuowen take out the stone. She didn't know why Zhuowen took it out. Moreover, Mei Su also noticed that although the stone looked ordinary, when she looked at it, she felt like she was looking at a spiritual creature. It was as if the thing in front of her wasn't a cold stone, but a spiritual pet. Remember, you can only absorb half of the reserves in this mineral vein. You can't absorb more than that. Do you understand? Under Mei Su's strange gaze, Zhuowen was actually lecturing the stone in his hand as if he was educating a child. Then, Zhuowen let go of his right hand. The surface of the stone emitted a faint light and suddenly swept out. Mei Su was shocked to find that wherever the stone passed, the surrounding emerald stones embedded in the rock wall were all dimmed and turned into dust. The energy in the Scarlet Moon stones was actually absorbed by the stone in an instant. This mineral vein was really big. He roughly estimated that there were more than 2 million Scarlet Moon stones in this mineral vein. Half of the mineral vein was more than 1 million Scarlet Moon stones. With so many Scarlet Moon stones and their quality, it should be enough to satisfy the mysterious stone, right? Zhuowen silently watched the mysterious stone's movements, but he was not confident. Big brother Zhuo, Mei Su, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. What kind of stone did Zhuowen take out? It was simply a glutton. It actually absorbed all the jade stones within a few hundred meters in such a short time and continued to move forward. I obtained this stone by accident. I don't know its origin, but this thing is very useful to me. Absorbing the Scarlet Moon stones can help it recover. This time, I was determined to find the Scarlet Moon stone vein, mainly because of this stone. Zhuowen finished speaking and followed behind the mysterious stone with Mei Su. Although Mei Su was simple, she was not stupid. She knew that this thing was related to Zhuowen's secret, so she wisely did not continue to ask. When Zhuowen reached the middle of the tunnel, Zhuowen immediately ordered the mysterious stone to stop. The mysterious stone was constantly flying in the tunnel, reluctantly shaking at the Scarlet Moon stones in front of it. Zhuowen did not care about the mysterious stone's thoughts and grabbed it in his hand. The moment he grabbed the stone, a mysterious energy was transmitted from the stone. At this moment, the mysterious stone's surface seemed to have undergone some kind of transformation. The surface of the stone, which was originally as black as coal, was now covered with neat and mysterious patterns. Zhuowen's eyes immediately revealed a look of understanding. He knew that the mysterious stone was reciprocating its gratitude, allowing him to enter into an epiphany. Chapter 3142.12 Divine Fiend's Formation. When Mei Su saw Zhuowen sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, she knew that Zhuowen was in a state of epiphany. Therefore, she did not disturb Zhuowen. Instead, she sat quietly to one side to protect Zhuowen. At this moment, Zhuowen was in an extremely profound state of comprehension. He formed hand seals with both hands, and the traces of formations surged out from his hands. They appeared as streaks of light in the air, which seemed resplendent and varied. At the same time, Zhuowen took out the true record of elixir arrays from the macro world and flipped open the chapter on formations. He kept flipping through the contents. This epiphany was a rare opportunity, so he chose to continue comprehending formations. In the slaughter heaven domain, formations were obviously more useful than elixir arts. As long as he could improve his formation skills to the heavenly passage level through this epiphany, he was confident that he could take away the crimson moon stellar wave milk in the stone chamber deep in the mineral vein. No matter how strong the green skeleton was, it could not break through the heavenly passage level formation in a short time. Time slowly passed. Zhuo Wen's hands constantly moved in the air, forming complicated seals. Gradually, the outline of a powerful array formation began to form around him. Although the formation only had an outline, the aura it emitted was becoming more and more terrifying and powerful. The moment Mei Su saw the outline of the formation, her beautiful eyes could not help but shrink into needles. Mei Su's origin was not ordinary. She was from the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, one of the top 10 clans in the primitive heaven domain. Since she was young, she had been exposed to a lot of high-level knowledge and knew many high-level formations and divine medicines. She was somewhat familiar with the formation that Zhuowen was setting up. She had never seen the real formation, but she had seen the description and pattern of this formation in the ancient books in her mother's study. She also remembered the rough outline of the formation. This formation was called the 12 Divine Fiends Formation, a genuine heavenly passage level killing formation. The 12 Divine Fiends Formation was very famous in the primitive heaven domain because it was jointly created by the 12 ancestral sorcerers. The principle of the formation was extremely complicated. Among all the Grand Ascension formations, the 12 heavenly deities killing formation was one of the more famous and powerful killing formations. According to her mother, the 12 heavenly deities killing formation was almost lost in the prehistoric heavenly domain. Even if it was not lost, no one in the prehistoric heavenly domain could set up a killing formation of this level. This was because there was not a single divine formation master in the entire Eldritch Heaven realm. Even in the Xianmi heavenly domain, it was said that there were only a handful of god formation masters of this level. Mei Su quickly shook her head and stared closely at Zhuowen's movements. She didn't think that Zhuowen could successfully set up the 12 Overseer Heavenly Gods killing array, which was almost lost in the primitive heavenly domain. Zhuowen naturally didn't know what Mei Su was thinking. He had read about the 12 heavenly deities killing array from the True Pill Array records. In the True Pill Array records array formation section, there was very little information on heaven-piercing grand arrays. The 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was only one of the few heaven-piercing grand arrays in the array formation section. The reason why he chose the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was because he saw that it was the only heaven-piercing grand array. Since he wanted to obtain the Scarlet Moon Stellar Wave Milk, he naturally had to face the green skeleton. It was naturally impossible to use a defensive array to deal with the green skeleton, so he could only use a killing array. 3 days later, the outline of the array formation around Zhuowen was completely clear. With Zhuowen as the center, the area within a radius of 1,000 meters was completely covered by a blood-red boundary. At the edge of the blood-red boundary, there was a blood-red giant standing in each of the 12 directions. Each giant had a different body shape, but they were all filled with terrifying killing intent and powerful aura. It was as if the 12 giants weren't giants, but 12 unshakable mountains. The shadows of the 12 ancestral shamans. It's really the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. Mei Su retreated from the blood-red boundary. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. She had repeatedly doubted that Zhuowen could have set up the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. However, the scene that appeared in front of her was like a slap to her face. Big Brother Zhuo, he's really amazing. Mei Su came back to her senses. Her face was flushed, and she looked at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes full of stars. At this moment, Zhuowen was still in a state of epiphany. His speed of forming hand seals was getting faster and faster. He looked at the true alchemy array record with concentration and seriousness. He was a little nervous and excited. He knew that the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was about to be set up. At this moment, the steps of setting up the array had come to an end. He knew that he had reached the most critical step. Success or failure depended on this. Zhuowen took out the Beast Bone Array disc and began to set up the array foundation. At the same time, he took out piles of supreme-grade, heavenly law origin crystals from the macro world. After all, the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array was a heaven-piercing Grand Array. Its consumption of heavenly law energy was terrifying. When Zhuowen took out enough heavenly Tao origin crystals, he rapidly formed a seal with both hands, intending to complete the final hand seal. After completing the last hand seal, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, which landed on the array foundation of the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. For a moment, Zhuowen felt that the Grand Array seemed to be alive. That mouthful of blood seemed to have endowed the array with spirituality. Zhuowen stood up. He was standing in the center of the blood-red boundary. 12 giants stood silently at 12 positions at the edge of the barrier, looking down at Zhuowen, who was in the center of the formation. The 12 giants were blood-red, and their faces were blurred. Their real faces could not be seen clearly. However, Zhuowen was able to recognize which ancestral shaman these 12 giants belonged to based on their size. Of course, the 12 ancestral sorcerer were just the shadows of the 12 Overseer Divine Fiends Grand Array. They were not the real ancestral sorcerer. However, even if they were not the real ancestral sorcerer, Zhuowen knew that the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerer had extraordinary battle strength. They all had the battle strength of an early-stage, heaven-piercing master. Zhuowen flicked his sleeve, sweeping up the formation base of this grand formation and storing it in his great world. The blood-red boundary and the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerer also disappeared. Zhuowen looked down at the mysterious stone in his hand and laughed softly. "Little guy, thank you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have reached the heaven-piercing level in the formation Tao so quickly." The mysterious stone emitted a faint light and immediately sent a weak, divine thought to Zhuowen. The divine thought mainly expressed that this guy still wanted to continue absorbing the emerald stones and wanted to absorb the remaining half of the mineral vein. Zhuowen smiled bitterly and said, "I've already promised them that I'll only take half of the mineral vein. I can't go back on my words." "Don't worry, there are other emerald mineral veins in the Slaughter Heaven region. I'll find other mineral veins for you." Chapter 30, 143. Extracting the Crimson Moon Star Wave Milk. Big Brother Zhua, thank you. I didn't do anything at all, but you're giving me half of the load. Mei Su naturally heard Zhuowen's whispers about the mysterious stone and was moved. She walked up to Zhuowen and bowed deeply. "Why are you being so polite? If it weren't for Miss Mei Su, I wouldn't have been able to find this jade stone load. We've already agreed that we'll split the jade stone load in half." Zhuowen smiled. Mei Su nodded. She was even more grateful to Zhuowen. "Mei Su, I'll clear a path for you. Then you can leave Death Canyon and meet up with Uncle Jiang and the others. You don't have to wait for me. Just return to the Divine City and gather the people there to mine the remaining jade stone load." Zhuowen suddenly looked at Mei Su with a solemn expression. "Big Brother Zhua, are you planning to stay and retrieve the Crimson Moon Star Wave Milk?" Mei Su thought of something, and her pretty face changed slightly. She continued, "Although you've arranged the 12 Divine Fiends formation, you also said that the green skeleton in the whirlpool is a very powerful existence. It's at least at the level of a sky-piercing master. Even with the 12 Divine Fiends formation, it's still very dangerous. Why don't you follow me back to the Divine City? I'll ask my mother to come over and help you retrieve the Crimson Moon Star Wave Milk." Zhuowen shook his head and said, "This Crimson Moon Star Wave Milk is very important to me. I must retrieve it as soon as possible. Moreover, The green skeleton is in a deep slumber. It's currently using the energy of the Crimson Moon's star wave milk to recover from its injuries. The longer this drags on, the stronger the green skeleton will become. At that time, it'll be more difficult to retrieve the Crimson Moon's star wave milk. Mei Su saw that Zhuowen was insistent and didn't try to persuade him anymore. She only reminded Zhuowen to be careful and not to push himself too hard. Then, Zhuowen led Mei Su to the entrance of the tunnel and soon arrived at the entrance of the lode. At this moment, the tunnel leading to the top was filled with countless rock pythons. However, at the end of the passage, Zhuowen had set up a powerful defensive array, blocking all the rock pythons outside the array. At this moment, the flowing light on the surface of the formation had become much dimmer. It was clear that the impact of the rock pythons on the formation was not small. Zhuowen took out the Hou-Yi divine bow again, knocked an arrow on the bowstring, and pulled the bowstring into a full moon. The moment Hou-Yi's godly arrow shot out, he undid the defensive formation, and the countless rock pythons in the tunnel fell down with a clatter. However, before these rock pythons could fall to the ground, they were completely pulverized by the terrifying killing intent emitted by Hou-Yi's divine arrow. Whoosh! Hou-Yi's divine arrow shot into the passageway, bursting with killing intent. None of the rock pythons in the tunnel could withstand the power of Hou-Yi's divine arrow, and all of them died without leaving behind a corpse. Let's go! Zhuowen pulled Mei Su along as they entered the passageway that was covered in blood and flesh. They walked up the passageway. At the top of the passageway, the king snake was still guarding the cave entrance. It was flustered and exasperated, constantly bombarding the cave entrance. Although it had made the cave entrance much larger, the king snake could not penetrate the cave in a short time and enter the depths of the cave because the soil here was too hard. Rumble! The king snake once again smashed its head against the cave entrance. It was at this moment that Hou-Yi's divine arrow broke through countless rock pythons and shot directly into the king snake's head. The Hou-Yi's divine arrow was incomparably sharp and carried with it a shocking killing intent. It drilled into the king snake's head and ran through its slender body. King Snake screamed miserably as its huge body twitched and twisted. Fresh blood sprayed out from King Snake's wounds without any regard for its life, turning into a rain of blood in the canyon. The other King Snake was not far away, completely unaware of what had happened. It hurried to the injured King Snake's side, wanting to comfort it. Following the sound of something breaking through the air, a blazing greenish-yellow light directly pierced through the second King Snake's vital point. The power of this divine arrow was even more terrifying than the first one. After shooting into the King Snake's vital point, it directly exploded. The second King Snake did not even struggle before it fell to the ground, lifeless. Zhuowen stood calmly at the cave entrance, holding the Hou-Yi's divine bow in his left hand and maintaining the shooting posture. The moment he arrived at the cave entrance, he shot out the second Hou-Yi's divine arrow and directly killed the second King Snake. Kill it while it's down. Zhuowen took a step forward, his whole body emitting a sparkling light. In an instant he arrived at the King Snake's head, which was in great pain. Clenching his right hand into a fist, he punched Wangshi's head again and again. The terrifying force was like a thunderous drum being struck between heaven and earth, deafening, shaking the heavens and earth as it rumbled. Zhuowen punched with all his might. Every punch carried supreme power, perfectly displaying the power of the Pangu's sacred body at the later stage of the six-star realm. Boom! Zhuowen punched the last time, and the King Snake's head directly exploded into a ball of blood. The King Snake crashed to the ground, and Zhuowen lightly landed on the ground. The death of the King Snake frightened many of the surrounding rock pythons, and they did not dare to approach Zhuowen. Instead, they all fled. Let's go! Zhuowen took Mei Su to the entrance of the canyon. When they arrived at the nearest defensive array that Zhuowen had set up earlier, Zhuowen bid farewell to Mei Su. Brother Zhuo, You must be careful. Mei Su looked at Zhuowen's back as he left. She was worried, and she silently prayed for Zhuowen. After Zhuowen returned to the cave, he went straight to the end of the tunnel. He stopped at the entrance of the stone room and looked at the pool of crimson moon stellar milk. He did not enter the stone room, but took out a piece of green stone and threw it into the stone room. A whirlpool appeared on the left side of the crimson moon stellar milk pool and sucked in the green stone. It was at this moment that Zhuowen took out the beast bone array disc and threw it into the whirlpool. The array disc unfolded, and the entire stone room was suddenly enveloped by a blood-red barrier. At the edge of the barrier, the shadows of the 12 ancestors of sorcerers stood in 12 positions, and a powerful pressure poured down. Zhuowen's eyes flickered, and he lifted his right foot and stepped into the stone room. Suddenly, the whirlpool appeared again, and a gust of wind swept over, rolling Zhuowen up. Zhuowen's entire body erupted with the power of the Pangu's sacred body, and he forcibly resisted the gust of wind. Then he walked step by step toward the crimson moon stellar milk pool. Chapter 30, 144. Leaving the Death Canyon as the scarlet moon stellar milk in the pool decreased, Zhuowen discovered that the heavenly energy in the stone room was also becoming thinner. After filling nearly 100 jade buckets, Zhuowen discovered that there weren't enough jade buckets in the outside world, but there was still a third of the scarlet moon stellar milk in the pool. Zhuowen didn't care about anything else. He directly used the Devourer King's devouring power to forcibly absorb it into the space of the outside world. He was prepared to let Ghost Plume, Yin Wuxia, and the others in the outside world use jade bottles to fill the scarlet moon stellar milk. Scarlet moon stellar milk was a heaven-level divine medicine. Apart from being preserved in a special environment, it had to be preserved in a jade container. Otherwise, its powerful medicinal properties would be easily lost. The instant Zhuowen absorbed the last of the scarlet moon stellar milk into the outside world, he felt an extremely vast and terrifying aura awaken in the stone room. In an instant, the entire stone room was filled with that terrifying aura. It was like a surging tide that drowned the entire stone room. That terrifying buoyancy made Zhuowen feel suffocated. How dare you covet this lord's belongings? You're courting death. A voice as loud as a bell resounded throughout the stone room. Shortly after, a human-sized whirlpool appeared on the left side of the pool. A green skeleton walked out of the whirlpool. It was the green skeleton that Zhuowen had seen in the whirlpool space with his divine sense. When he first saw the green skeleton, it was sitting cross-legged, so he didn't have any concept of its height. But now that the green skeleton stood up and appeared in front of him, Zhuowen discovered that although the green skeleton was only a skeleton, it was abnormally tall. It was at least 3 feet tall. Zhuowen stomped his right foot and quickly retreated. "Where do you think you're going?" The green skeleton was flustered and exasperated. Green flames ignited in its hollow skeleton eyes. It stomped on the ground, bursting out with a wild gale. Rumble. However, the moment the green skeleton rushed out, it was blocked by a blood-red barrier. It only then discovered that its surroundings had been set up in advance by someone. 12 Overseers' divine wraith formation. When the green skeleton saw the shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerers surrounding it, it could not help but take a few steps back, looking extremely shocked. At this moment, Zhuowen had already retreated to the door of the stone room and looked at the green skeleton with fear. "Little guy, you better not do anything stupid. This seat paid a great price to find this crimson moon stellar wave milk. You actually dare to take this seat's things? Are you tired of living? If you know what's good for you, you'd better return the crimson moon stellar wave milk to me. I'll pretend that nothing happened and let you leave this place safely." The green skeleton's eyes were burning with a faint green flame. Its voice was slightly anxious as it threatened. Zhuowen looked at the green skeleton coldly and sneered. "If you want it, come and get it yourself. Why do you need me to send it back?" The green skeleton's eyes burst with green flames as it said angrily, "Little brat, you're pissing me off. Do you know the consequences of angering me?" "I don't know, and I don't want to know. If you want to take back the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk, you'll have to break my 12 divine beings killing formation first." Zhuowen sneered and left the stone room without looking back. The green skeleton looked at Zhuowen's back silently and roared angrily. It had already suffered a very serious injury, and its strength was less than 10%. It was relying on the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk to recover from its injuries. But now Zhuo had taken away all of the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk and trapped him in the 12 Overseers' Divine Wraith formation. Of course, it had heard of the 12 divine beings killing formation. It was a sky-reaching level formation. The shadows of the 12 ancestral sorcerers that appeared in the formation all had the strength of an early-stage, sky-reaching master. If the green skeleton was at its peak, the 12 divine beings killing formation would not be able to trap it. But now, if it forcibly broke through the 12 divine beings killing formation, it would pay a very heavy price. It was in the formation and did not dare to move at will. "Damn it, damn it, damn it. Don't let me see you. Otherwise, I'll tear you into pieces." The green skeleton was flustered and exasperated. It grabbed at the void with its right hand, and a vortex reappeared. It re-entered the vortex space. The vortex space was an independent, small space attached to the stone room. The 12 divine beings killing formation would not affect this space. In the vortex space, the green skeleton came to a valley where cylindrical jade barrels as tall as a person were placed. These jade barrels were twice as big as the ones Zhuowen had taken out before. In the valley, there were hundreds of such jade barrels. This is the source of the rarest Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. I've been here for countless years and collected almost all the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk in this spring. Only the last pool of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk was left, but it was destroyed by that ant. But it doesn't matter. This Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk should be enough for me to recover by more than half. After I recover, I'll kill that ant. The green skeleton's voice was cold and gloomy. Then it suddenly waved its right hand, causing over 100 jade buckets in the valley to explode. The Crimson Moon Star Wave that contained dense heavenly energy transformed into a long river that surged into the green skeleton's body. After flying out of the cave, Zhuowen came to the Death Canyon. He looked at the pitch-black cave below him and frowned slightly. He felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. This was because he found that the 12 divine beings killing formation he had set up in the stone room did not show any signs of being triggered. In other words, the green skeleton watched him leave with the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk and did not show any signs of breaking the formation to chase after him. That green skeleton didn't show any signs of movement. How strange! Zhuowen frowned slightly. He hesitated for a while, but did not go back to see what was going on with the green skeleton. He was very confident in the 12 divine beings killing formation. Although the green skeleton was mysterious, its injuries were too severe. It would definitely not be able to break free from the 12 divine beings killing formation. Zhuowen walked along the canyon and moved forward. Along the way, he would occasionally encounter some scattered killing beasts, which were easily dealt with by him. However, as Zhuowen walked along the canyon, he would set up a creation level formation every once in a while. With his current Heavenly Master Array Dao, setting up a creation level formation was a piece of cake for him. He did this just in case. Although most of the killing beasts in the Death Canyon were killed, there were still a small number of them left. The jade or vein was in the deepest part of the canyon. If the God City wanted to mine the ore, they would have to go deep into the canyon. The remaining killing beasts would cause a lot of trouble for the God City cultivators. He set up the formation to solve this problem. It could be considered as Mei Su's reward for helping him find the jade or vein and obtaining the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. Chapter 30-145. Arriving at Hongxian Divine City. I'm finally out. Zhuowen felt refreshed as he walked out of the Death Canyon. He had gained a lot in the Death Canyon and was in a good mood. Lord Zhua, you're finally out. Xiong Fei, who had been waiting at the entrance of the canyon for a long time, hurried over when he saw that Zhuowen had finally come out. He was so excited that tears and snot were running down his face. Zhuowen looked at the excited Xiong Fei and the group of elite beastmen behind him and asked, "Have the people from the Divine City left?" Xiong Fei nodded and said, "Yes, they've been gone for a while. But before Miss Mei Su left, she asked me to pass this to you. She said that you can enter the Divine City with this token." As he spoke, Xiong Fei passed a white token to Zhuowen. Zhuowen took the white token and immediately recognized it as the Hongxian token that Mei Su had taken out. Judging from Jiang Ye's attitude at the time, it was obvious that the Hongxian token was a very important item. After all, the Hongxian token was equivalent to an order from the city lord of the Divine City. Zhuowen didn't expect Mei Su to leave the Hongxian token to him. It was obvious that Mei Su valued his entry into the Divine City. Of course, Zhuowen also felt Mei Su's trust in him. The Hongxian token was very important to Mei Su. She was willing to give it to him because she trusted him. Got it. Zhuowen put away the Hongxian token and said to Xiong Fei, "Xiong Fei, give me a map of Hongxian Divine City." Xiong Fei didn't dare to delay. He took out a sheepskin scroll from his sleeve and obediently handed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen took the sheepskin scroll and unfolded it. After studying it for a while, he realized that Hongxian Divine City wasn't far from the Flowing Cloud tribe. "Xiong Fei, thank you for this. I'll go to Hongxian Divine City immediately. These Heavenly Tao origin crystals are your reward." Zhuowen waved his sleeve and took out thousands of supreme-grade Heavenly Tao origin crystals from the outside world. He leaped onto the dragon horse and clamped his legs on the horse's belly. The dragon horse neighed and galloped away. "Lord Zhua, don't you want these jade stones?" Xiong Fei looked at the supreme-grade Heavenly Tao origin crystals excitedly. However, he soon thought Zhuowen's dragon horse. He recalled the Heavenly Tao origin crystals they had collected in the canyon. Zhuowen, who was riding on the dragon horse, did not answer Xiong Fei. Instead, he threw out a black stone. The mysterious stone flew over and circled around the place where Xiong Fei had placed the jade stone before returning to Zhuowen's side. Xiong Fei and the rest were dumbfounded because the jade stones they had collected had all turned into dust. A day later, Zhuowen rode on his dragon horse and stopped at a desert. He raised his head and looked ahead. 1,000 meters ahead, a huge city appeared in Zhuowen's line of sight like a crouching dragon. This huge city was built with huge pieces of yellow stones, and the city walls alone were over 1,000 feet high. Around the huge city, dense streams of light flickered. Zhuowen could see that these streams of light were traces of an array. In addition, above the huge city, there was a green array pattern that was large enough to cover the entire city. This array pattern constantly overflowed with a green aura that surged into the huge city. Zhuowen looked at the array pattern and knew that it was a huge array that supplied Heavenly Tao energy. Because of the existence of this array, the environment in the huge city was the same as the outside world. It was filled with Heavenly Tao energy. The cultivators in the huge city could peacefully cultivate and advance. Zhuowen knew that this huge city was Hongxian Divine City. Zhuowen rode on the dragon horse and continued forward. Soon, they arrived in front of the huge city gate of Hongxian Divine City. This city gate was made entirely of bronze. On the surface of the city gate, there were many complicated patterns engraved on it, making it look mysterious and ancient. Zhuowen looked at the patterns on the surface of the bronze city gate. He knew that these patterns were array patterns. Moreover, they were of a high grade. Once someone attacked the city gate, the array patterns on the surface of the city gate would be activated. At that time, the array patterns would explode with terrifying energy. Zhuowen stopped in front of the city gate. At this moment, the city gate was tightly shut. On top of the city wall above the city gate, two guards noticed Zhuowen and immediately shouted, "Who are you?" "I am a friend of Miss Mei Su and Jiang Yi. I am here today because of their invitation." Zhuowen jumped off the dragon horse and shouted at the guards. The two guards looked at each other in confusion. One of them, a tall and thin man, said in a deep voice, "You are a friend of Miss Mei Su and Lord Jiang Yi? Why didn't they mention you?" Hearing this, Zhuowen's face sank. He thought that after Jiang Yi and Mei Su returned to the Divine City, they would greet the guards. Now, it seemed that the two of them did not greet him at all. It seemed that he could only use the Hong Xian token. Zhuowen took out the white token and raised it above his head. "This is the Hong Xian token that Miss Mei Su gave me. She handed it to me personally. Now do you believe me?" The moment the two guards saw the Hong Xian token in Zhuowen's hand, their faces changed drastically. They looked at Zhuowen with bewilderment. The two guards whispered to each other for a while, glancing at Zhuowen from time to time with strange looks in their eyes. "Wait," the tall and skinny guard said before leaving the city wall. The remaining guard, on the other hand, kept sizing up Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with vigilance and hostility. Zhuowen furrowed his brows. He hadn't heard the whispers of the two guards just now. However, after he took out the Hong Xian token, the two guards' attitudes became unfriendly. Zhuowen had a bad premonition. After a while, the tall and thin guard returned with a young man. This young man was about 10 feet tall and covered in green scales. Zhuowen could tell at a glance that this young man belonged to the Dragon Clan, just like Jiang Yi. However, this young man's strength was obviously inferior to Jiang Ye's. From the aura he exuded, he was probably only at the early stage of the Creator Realm. However, this young man should be a junior. His talent was not bad since he could cultivate to the early stage of the Creator Realm. "You said you are a friend of Mei Su and Uncle Jiang." The young man stood on the city wall and looked down at Zhuowen with cold and merciless eyes. "Yes. Did Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang not mention me when they returned?" Zhuowen asked with a frown. "Returned? Haha." The young man revealed a cold smile and continued, "I heard from the guards that you took out the Hong Xian token just now. Toss the Hong Xian token to me and see if it's real." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He felt that something was wrong and asked coldly, "Did something happen between Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang?" I said, "Throw the Hong Xian token to me. You have no right to ask me questions." Chapter 3146. The young man from the Dragon Tribe Zhuowen raised his head and looked coldly at the young man from the Dragon Tribe. "The Hong Xian token belongs to Miss Mei Su. Unless she comes out personally and I hand it to her, no one else has the right to make me hand it over." The young man from the Dragon Tribe stared coldly at Zhuowen and suddenly laughed. "Are you still putting on an act in front of me? Mei Su and Uncle Jiang were ambushed by the people from the Dark Rock Divine City because of you. Otherwise, how could something as precious as the Hong Xian token appear in your hands?" The young man from the Dragon Tribe shouted, "Men, take down this spy at the city gate." Rumble. The bronze city gate slowly opened and nearly 100 cavalrymen in heavy armor appeared behind the gate. They glared at Zhuowen fiercely. The cavalrymen quickly rushed out and surrounded Zhuowen. Zhuowen frowned as he looked at the cavalrymen around him. He was confused. However, from the words of the young man from the Dragon Tribe, he knew that Mei Su and Jiang Yi had not returned to Hong Xian Divine City. Instead, they had been captured by the people from the Dark Rock Divine City. It was no wonder that the guards did not know that he had come to Hong Xian Divine City. Moreover, he was suspected when he took out the Hong Xian token. "If I were a spy, do you think I would walk right into your trap and come to Hong Xian Divine City and even stupidly take out the Hong Xian token and show it to you?" Zhuowen stood calmly on the spot, and his tone was terrifyingly calm. The cavalrymen surrounding Zhuowen looked at each other. They had obviously thought of the same thing and were hesitant about whether they should make a move. The young man from the dragon tribe sneered. He took a step forward and jumped off the city wall. The powerful impact caused the ground to tremble slightly. You happen to be planning to use such a trick to confuse us and make us suspicious. Unfortunately, this little trick of yours is completely useless against me. What are you waiting for? Take down this spy. The young man from the dragon clan ordered the cavalry in front of him coldly. The young man from the dragon race had a high status in the Hongxian divine city, and 100 or so cavalrymen did not dare to disobey him. The long spears in their hands flew towards Zhuowen. However, these cavalrymen knew when to stop. They did not aim for Zhuowen's vital points. Instead, they aimed for Zhuowen's limbs. Clearly, they intended to cripple Zhuowen and capture him alive. Ding, ding, ding. What happened next shocked all the cavalrymen surrounding Zhuowen. Their spears had indeed pierced into Zhuowen's limbs, but the moment their spear tips touched the surface of Zhuowen's body, they produced a clear clanging of metal. Their spears were actually unable to harm this person's body. How is that possible? How can this person's physical body be so terrifying? Our weapons are completely useless against him. All the cavalrymen were shocked. They couldn't help but retreat. Unfortunately, Zhuowen would not give them any chance to retreat. Zhuowen grabbed all the long spears that were aimed at him with both hands. Then he exerted force with both hands. A terrifying force exploded, and all the long spears that were caught by him exploded into countless wood shavings. The cavalrymen screamed in pain as they were sent flying. The young man from the dragon clan watched as the countless cavalrymen were sent flying. The figure standing in the middle was like a demon god, standing tall and firm. Then the young man from the dragon clan realized that the figure had turned around and was looking at him coldly. That pair of eyes was filled with killing intent and brutality. It made his scalp tingle. You've got guts. How dare you touch the cavalrymen of the Hongxian divine city? Are you tired of living? The young man from the dragon clan said in a frightened voice as he slowly retreated. I am indeed tired of living. However, it's not that I'm tired of living. I'm tired of waiting for a piece of trash like you to get your ass in front of me and kowtow. Zhuowen's voice was calm, but terrifying killing intent exploded from his body. He slowly stepped out with his right foot and walked toward the young man from the dragon clan. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? You're just an eternal overlord trash. How dare you threaten me to get my ass in front of you and kowtow? You're daydreaming. The young man from the dragon clan was enraged. He was a top genius of the younger generation in the Hongxian divine city, but now he was being looked down upon by an eternal overlord trash. Given his pride, how could he swallow this insult? Boom! The young man from the dragon clan no longer retreated. Instead, he took a step forward and fully unleashed the aura of an early-stage creator. Terrifying gusts of wind swept out around the young man from the dragon clan, causing his hair to flutter in the absence of wind. He looked elegant and dashing. The young man from the dragon clan flashed and flew toward Zhuowen. His right hand clenched into a fist and punched out, creating a muffled explosion. Bang! The young man from the dragon clan punched Zhuowen in the chest and laughed maniacally. An eternal overlord is indeed an eternal overlord. In front of me, the creator, you're just trash and a joke. But soon the young man from the dragon clan realized that something was wrong. Zhuowen was still standing in front of him and hadn't been sent flying by the force of his punch. He was as immovable as a mountain. So this is your full-strength attack? It's as soft as a woman's. Zhuowen looked indifferently at the young man from the dragon clan, a cold smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The young man from the dragon clan's pupils shrank to the size of needles. His legs felt weak. That was indeed his full-strength attack. His full-strength attack should have been enough to blast this person to smithereens. But in reality, this person was standing in the same spot without moving an inch. His body was as hard as steel, and there wasn't even a scratch on his chest. How is this possible? The young man from the dragon clan couldn't be any more shocked. He unconsciously retreated. Unfortunately, the moment he retreated, a vicious slap landed on his cheek. The terrifying strength of the slap caused the dragon youth's face to swell up. He spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with broken teeth as he fell to the ground. Then Zhuowen stomped on the young man's head, causing his face to sink into the mud. The surrounding cavalrymen got up one after another. They had planned to charge at Zhuowen again, but when they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. The young man from the dragon clan had always been a powerful existence in their hearts. Apart from the experts of the older generation, he was almost invincible. But now the young man from the dragon clan was actually stomped on by this young man. This was too unbelievable. Did I say you should retreat? Zhuowen's calm and terrifying voice sounded. To the young man from the dragon clan, this voice was like the voice of a messenger from hell. It was so terrifying that it made his heart palpitate. Now kneel in front of me and apologize for your rudeness. Chapter 30, 147. Great Guardian in humiliation flashed across the dragon tribe youth's eyes as he growled. Do you know who I am? Do you know where you are? This is Hongxian Divine City. How dare you behave so atrociously and act so impudently in front of me? Did I ask you to spout nonsense? Zhuowen pressed the tip of his right foot against the dragon tribe youth's abdomen and lifted him up. He then lifted his right foot and kicked the dragon tribe youth's body. Instantly, the dragon tribe youth coughed out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. He was hit so hard that he saw stars and vomited blood. It was as if he was about to vomit out his internal organs. Do you think that I won't dare to kill you because this is Hongxian Divine City? The killing intent in Zhuowen's eyes grew increasingly intense, as if it had materialized. The dragon tribe youth was truly frightened when he felt the killing intent. His body trembled and his lips trembled. He finally experienced the ruthlessness of this young man, especially the terrifying killing intent. He did not doubt that if he did not do as this young man said, he would really be killed by this young man. I know I was wrong. The dragon tribe youth hurriedly got up and knelt on the ground. He kowtowed to Zhuowen as his knees trembled. What's going on? Just as the dragon tribe youth was kneeling in front of Zhuowen and apologizing, a middle-aged man walked out of the city gates. Behind the middle-aged man were thousands of cavalrymen. The middle-aged man had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He looked like a human, but upon closer inspection, the middle-aged man's hair was snow-white and there were 8 grayish-white fox tails behind him. The moment he saw the middle-aged man, Zhuowen knew that he was from the 9-tailed fox tribe. Moreover, he was from the 9-tailed fox tribe that had 8 tails. Mei Su had told him about the 9-tailed fox tribe before. It was said that the strength of this tribe was reflected by the number of tails they had. The 9-tailed fox tribe was the strongest and stood at the top of the 9-tailed fox tribe. Since this man had 8 tails, his strength must be terrifying. Great Guardian Ingjie, the dragon tribe youth, turned around. The moment he saw the middle-aged man, he was overjoyed and wanted to get up. Unfortunately, the moment he stood up, Zhuowen raised his right foot and stomped on the young man's face, crushing him under his foot. Did I allow you to get up? Zhuowen's cold voice slowly sounded. Everyone was shocked. Even the middle-aged man was dumbfounded. Wasn't this young man a little too arrogant? Great Guardian Ingjie was right in front of him, yet he had mercilessly stepped on the young man's face. Wasn't this a slap in the face? The dragon clan youth twisted his body in humiliation. His heart was filled with shock and anger. Ingjie's position in Hongxian Divine City was second only to the city lord. He was even higher than the vice city lord, Jiang Yi. Moreover, his strength was second only to the city lord in the Divine City. Among the countless tribes in the Hongxian Divine City, he was well known. In the Dragon Tribe youth's opinion, this person should restrain himself after hearing the title of Great Guardian Ingjie. However, not only did Great Guardian Ingjie not restrain himself, Great Guardian Ingjie stepped on him even more viciously than before. Wasn't he afraid of Great Guardian Ingjie? Great Guardian Ingjie's face turned ugly. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Sir, are you here to cause trouble in Hongxian Divine City? I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to look for Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang. I'm here to bring a great opportunity to Hongxian Divine City." Unfortunately, the so-called genius of Hongxian Divine City didn't take it seriously and even treated me as a spy. Zhuowen stepped on the Dragon Tribe youth's head with a little more force. The Dragon Tribe youth grimaced in pain and couldn't help but beg for mercy. What a boastful tone! Bringing a great opportunity to Hongxian Divine City? What a joke! Also, Miss Mei Su and Jiang Yi were captured by Dark Rock Divine City. What's your motive for coming here to look for them? Great Guardian Ingjie said coldly. Zhuowen frowned slightly and said, "Is Dark Rock Divine City one of the 3 divine cities of the Slaughter Heaven region? Why did they capture Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang?" Great Guardian Ingjie looked at Zhuowen strangely. "Is there a mistake? Is this guy from the Slaughter Heaven region? How can he not know about Dark Rock Divine City? I order you to release Hao Rui immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless." Great Guardian Ingjie's voice was terrifyingly low. A terrifying aura burst out from his body. Zhuowen's eyelids twitched. Great Guardian Ingjie was indeed powerful. He was stronger than Jiang Yi and should be at the peak of the half-step Tongtian realm. He was probably not far from breaking through to the Tongtian realm. This guy was rude to me first and hasn't apologized sincerely. How can I let him go? Zhuowen's voice contained an unquestionable meaning, and his tone was very cold. "Then you're courting death." Great Guardian Ingjie was furious. He took a step forward and rushed toward Zhuowen. The thousands of cavalrymen behind Great Guardian Ingjie stood quietly in place. They were confident in Great Guardian Ingjie's strength. They knew that as long as Great Guardian Ingjie attacked, the young man in front of them would be defeated without a doubt. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with endless fighting spirit. Ever since his Pangu's sacred body had advanced to the late 6th star, he had never truly fought with a half-step Tongtian realm lord like Great Guardian Ingjie. In the previous few battles, he had used Hou Yi's divine arrow to finish off his opponents in order to end the battle quickly. Good. Zhuowen kicked the young man from the dragon clan away. Sparkling light burst out from his body, making Zhuowen look like he was made of glass. Boom! In just an instant, Zhuowen and the Great Protector Ingjie clashed head-on with each other. A terrifying, explosive sound, like a profound thunder descending from the 9 heavens, exploded on the spot. The terrifying force was like an exploding sea of clouds. It suddenly whistled and swept up a terrifying storm. The cavalrymen around them were swept away by the terrifying aftermath. They were all shocked. Thump, thump, thump. Zhuowen let out a muffled groan and retreated continuously. He retreated nearly 100 steps, leaving behind deep footprints along the way. Great Guardian Ingjie was also retreating. He retreated 70 or 80 steps until he reached the edge of the city gate. Then he steadied himself. Great Guardian Ingjie looked at Zhuowen in shock. He couldn't imagine how this guy in front of him, who was only an eternal overlord, could have such terrifying strength. The cavalrymen behind the city gate were equally shocked, as well as the young man from the dragon clan who had been kicked around by Zhuowen and was wailing in agony. Only now did he truly understand the terrifying strength of this unfamiliar young man. He could actually fight with Great Guardian Ingjie. Was this guy really an eternal overlord? Chapter 3148. The Woman in White. After Zhuowen stabilized himself, he narrowed his eyes and looked at Jie in front of him. He had a general understanding of his own strength. His Pangu's sacred body was at the late stage of 6 stars, which was equivalent to a half-step Tongtian master. Of course, if he relied on his sacred body's terrifying recovery ability, he would be able to fight an early-stage Tongtian master without dying. Again, Zhuowen let out a long howl and took a step forward. His entire body flickered with sparkling and translucent light, and he looked like a man-made glass divine statue. Jie was shocked and angry. Although he was shocked by Zhuowen's strength, he also knew that this person's strength was weaker than his own. Your strength has really shocked me, but you will never be my match. In the end, you will only be trampled under my feet. Jie sneered. His body exploded with terrifying energy ripples as he flew toward Zhuowen. Boom! 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 The two of them fought in an instant. Terrifying shockwaves spread out in all directions like water ripples. The cavalry in front of the city gate had already retreated to the safe zone inside the city gate. The Dragon Clan youth was so scared that he retreated. His eyes were full of fear as he looked at the two people fighting in the sky. He really wanted to slap himself. If he had known that this person's strength was so terrifying, he would never have provoked such an existence. He even suspected that this person was a spy from Dark Rock Divine City. With such strength, he was at least one of the few higher-ups in the Divine City. How could he have the leisure to be a mere spy? Boom! Just as the Dragon Clan youth was letting his imagination run wild, a figure fell to the ground in a sorry state, creating a huge crater. Then he saw Zhuowen climb out of the crater in a sorry state. He let out a sigh of relief. This person's strength was indeed terrifying, but he was still no match for Jie. The Dragon Tribe youth originally thought that Zhuowen would definitely surrender after being suppressed by Great Guardian Jie. However, he did not expect that this fellow was actually not afraid of death. He once again rushed out and engaged in a fierce battle with Great Guardian Jie in midair. As the battle continued, the Dragon Youth discovered that Great Guardian Jie seemed to be at a disadvantage. At this moment, Great Guardian Jie's face became more and more solemn and unsightly. He looked at Zhuowen in front of him with bewilderment. Following the continuous battle, his consumption also became greater and greater. If he was in the Divine City, he could recover in time with the supply of heavenly energy. However, there was no heavenly energy outside the city gates. Every time he attacked, he would use up a lot of heavenly energy. Furthermore, he was unable to replenish enough heavenly energy, so the more he fought, the weaker he became. On the other hand, the young man in front of him didn't know what fatigue was, and he maintained his strongest battle prowess at all times. Didn't this guy need to consume the energy of the heavenly Tao to fight? Boom! At the instant Grand Guardian Jie was distracted, Zhuowen seized this opportunity and arrived before Grand Guardian Jie like a bolt of lightning. He raised his right hand and fiercely slapped Grand Guardian Jie's face. Smack! The crisp sound of a slap rang out. Immediately, the cavalrymen of the Divine City were stunned to find that Great Guardian Jie, who was almost invincible in their hearts, had been slapped to the ground by the young man in midair. Moreover, he was in a head-down position. Great Guardian Jie's eyes were filled with humiliation. The moment he fell to the ground, he immediately got up. However, he did not get up to fight with Zhuowen again. Instead, he planned to retreat. Zhuowen clearly saw through Great Guardian Jie's intention. With a wave of his sleeve, he took out a golden rope from the Great World and threw it out. This golden rope was a peak creation level binding divine weapon. Zhuowen had obtained it from an enemy he had defeated in the past. In the past, he rarely used this binding divine weapon, so he rarely used it. Now, it just so happened that it came in handy. The rope caught up to Great Guardian Jie at lightning speed and tied him up. The Great Protector Jie had exhausted too much of his Heavenly Way energy. The reason he had fled was naturally because he wanted to enter the divine city to recover his heavenly way energy as soon as possible. Unfortunately, Zhuan wouldn't give him the chance. After being bound by the rope, Great Guardian Ingjie fell to the ground and wriggled continuously, trying to break free. Unfortunately, it was all to no avail. Zhuan came to Great Guardian Ingjie's side and lifted him up. You are clearly an eternal overlord. How can you be so strong? Also, don't you use up heavenly energy in battle? Great Guardian Ingjie's face darkened, panic flashing through his eyes. Zhuan inwardly praised Great Guardian Ingjie's calmness. As expected of someone with a high position in the divine city. You don't need to know about this. You only need to know that I came to Hongxian Divine City with no ill intentions. It was you who attacked me time and time again. I was only defending myself. Zhuan's voice was low. His battle with Great Guardian Ingjie was more exhausting than the latter. It was just that he had a great world. Moreover, he could open it freely. When he was fighting with Great Guardian Ingjie, he was also constantly absorbing the heavenly Tao origin crystals in the great world. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to defeat an expert like Great Guardian Ingjie so easily by relying on himself. How dare you? Why haven't you released Great Guardian Ingjie yet? The Dragon Clan youth shouted at Zhuan. Zhuan could not be bothered with that Dragon Clan youth. Instead, he looked above the city wall and said indifferently, You've been watching there for so long. Aren't you tired? Zhuan's words immediately alerted everyone present. They all subconsciously raised their heads to look at the city wall. They saw a slim and graceful figure standing on the city wall. It was a woman around 30 years old. Her skin was smooth and her face was like a peach blossom. She was dressed in a white veil and looked like a fairy in a painting. She stood aloof from the world and floated like an immortal. This woman's appearance was definitely a rare beauty. In particular, her otherworldly temperament gave people the illusion that she was a true fairy. What caught Zhuan's attention the most was not the woman's stunning appearance, but the 9 white, fluffy tails that extended from her back. Without a doubt, this woman was from the 9-tailed fox clan. Moreover, in Hongxian Divine City, only the city lord of Hongxian Divine City could possess 9 tails. City Lord! The Dragon Clan youth immediately knelt on one knee. His eyes were filled with devotion and fanaticism. The thousands of cavalrymen in the city gate also knelt down and called out the city Lord's name. Great Guardian Ingjie struggled continuously, but was firmly held in Zhuan's hand. He could only look at the beautiful woman helplessly. The woman in white did not speak. Her jade-like feet tapped lightly in the void, and she slowly descended from the city gate. However, the moment the woman in white landed in midair, Zhuan's expression changed. The woman in white instantly disappeared on the spot. Then, she brushed past him like a soul. Chapter 30, 149. Hongxian Token Zhuan stared at the white-robed lady, who landed not far away. In that instant, he only saw a flash in front of his eyes. He did not even see the white-robed lady's figure clearly before Ingjie, who was in his hand, was snatched away by the white-robed lady. Soul ambush. Zhuan's eyes flickered as he guessed the move that the white-robed lady had used. Speaking of which, Mei Su had used this move in the Death Canyon before. It had almost teleported into the Purple River where Zhuan was. It had left a deep impression on Zhuan back then. After that, when Zhuan and Mei Su entered the depths of the Death Canyon, they had discussed this move. It was then that he knew that this move was called Soul Ambush. It was said that this Soul Ambush was the innate ability of the 9-tailed fox clan. Moreover, the number of times the Soul Ambush could be used was closely related to the number of tails one had. Mei Su only had 3 tails, so she could only use Soul Ambush 3 times. The white-robed lady in front of him had also used Soul Ambush, but her technique and power were much more superior than Mei Su's. In that instant, Zhuan could not even catch a glimpse of the white-robed lady's figure. "Thank you, City Lord." The rope on Ingjie's body fell off, and he quickly bowed to express his gratitude to the white-robed lady. The white-robed lady looked at Ingjie indifferently and said, "Ingjie, do you know where you went wrong?" The white-robed lady's voice was crisp and clear like the chirping of an oriole. It was pleasing to the ear, but also slightly cold. Ingjie hurriedly knelt on the ground. His face was filled with fear, but there was a trace of doubt in his eyes. Obviously, he was puzzled by the white-robed lady's words. The white-robed lady did not say anything else. Instead, she looked at Juowen and said, "Little brother, do you have my Hongshin token? I gave it to my daughter, Meisu. Without her permission, it is impossible for anyone else to obtain it. I believe that you have no ill intentions in coming to Hongshin Divine City. However, to prove your innocence, can you show me the Hongshin token?" Zhuowen nodded and handed the Hongshin token to the white-clothed woman without the slightest hesitation. The Hongshin token might be a good thing for those who wanted to take control of the Hongshin Divine City. They could use the token to obtain the authority of the city lord 3 times. However, Zhuowen wasn't interested in this at all. His main objective in coming to Hongshin God City was to obtain the exact location of the Forbidden Zone that would allow him to leave the Slaughter Heaven region. The woman in white took a deep look at Zhuowen. She never thought that the Hongshin token, which others could only dream of, would be given to her by this young man just like that. His magnanimity was truly extraordinary. From Zhuowen's performance, she was certain that this person had nothing to do with Meisu and Jiang Ye's abduction. "The Hongshin token was given to me by Miss Meisu in the Death Canyon. She knew that I wanted to go to the Hongshin God City, but she was afraid that I wouldn't be able to enter. Therefore, she gave me the Hongshin token for the time being. After I enter the Hongshin God City, I will return this token to Miss Meisu." Following that, Zhuowen gave a brief account of what happened in the Death Canyon. When the woman in white heard that there was a huge jade or vein in the depths of the Death Canyon, her calm expression couldn't conceal her excitement. "You are saying that the jade or vein in the depths of the Death Canyon has at least 2 million jade ores?" The woman in white asked emotionally. "Yes, according to the agreement between Miss Meisu and I, we will split it evenly. She and I will split it in half. I have already taken half of the mine, and the remaining half has 1 million jadeite stones." Zhuowen nodded. "City Lord, this person's words might not be trustworthy. Who knows if the jade or vein in the Death Canyon was made up by him? It's possible that his objective is to lure us into the Death Canyon to our deaths." Great Guardian Ingjie said in a deep voice. The woman in white knitted her brows slightly. She had also thought of this point. The Death Canyon was famous for being a dangerous place. There were many slaughter beasts in it. Even if the elite cavalrymen of the Divine City were to attack the Death Canyon by force, they might be able to break through the Death Canyon, but they would suffer heavy losses. "I have no reason to lie to all of you. I am a divine master of heaven level. Why would I come all the way here just to lie to all of you?" Zhuowen was helpless. He knew that the only way to convince the woman in white was to reveal his identity as a divine master of heaven level. A divine master of heaven level was a sensational existence even in the Xian Mi heavenly territory, let alone in the Slaughter Heaven territory where energy was scarce. "What? You are a divine master of heaven level?" The surrounding people were shocked. They looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. The woman in white was so shocked that she blurted it out. She didn't realize that she had lost her composure. "You are bragging. A divine master of heaven level is extremely rare even in the Xian Mi heavenly territory. You are so young. How could you be a divine master of heaven level? I think you don't even know the basics of array Dao." The young man from the dragon tribe said disdainfully. The woman in white knitted her brows and looked at Zhuowen with disappointment. Originally, she had admired Zhuowen's previous performance. However, This boastful statement had completely obliterated her good impression of him. Zhuowen ignored the questioning looks of the others. He walked slowly to the bronze city gate and pressed his right hand on the surface of the gate. Suddenly, the countless patterns on the surface of the bronze door lit up, but they soon dimmed completely. Then, the complicated patterns collapsed with a loud bang. The god of creation staged defensive formation on the bronze gate was instantly broken by Zhuowen. The woman in white looked at Zhuowen in shock. She was starting to believe that Zhuowen could really be a divine master of heaven level. After all, one had to be at least at the creation level to be able to break a divine master of heaven level in an instant. Even if the young man in front of her was not a divine master of heaven level, he was at least at the creation level. There was no divine master of heaven level in Hongxian City. This was because the highest level divine master of heaven level in Hongxian City was only a divine master of heaven level. Immortal Master, I was rude just now. I did not discipline my subordinates well and allowed them to offend you. The woman in white cupped her fists and bowed to Zhuowen. The young man from the dragon tribe and great guardian Ingjia were also stunned. However, the two of them knew the severity of the situation. They quickly apologized to Zhuowen. Immortal Master, we were wrong. We should not have wronged you for no reason. Zhuowen waved his hand and said, since it was a misunderstanding, let's forget about it. Zhuowen knew that the woman in white had bowed to him and apologized to him because she valued his status as a divine master of heaven level. In the Slaughter Heaven territory, array formations were very important to a huge building like a divine city. Zhuowen was the one and only divine master of heaven level. He should be respected by everyone, including the city lord. Chapter 3150. Forbidden Area in the tallest building in Hongxian Divine City. In a spacious meeting room, the white-robed lady sat at the head of the table. Zhuowen sat beside her. Great guardian Ingjia and the young man from the dragon race sat on the other side. However, from their positions, it could be seen that great guardian Ingjia and the young man from the dragon race had a much lower status than Zhuowen. After proving his Dao validation level, Zhuowen received everyone's recognition. His status had risen to second only to the white-robed lady. After a round of introductions, Zhuowen finally found out that the white-robed lady's name was Meiying. She was Mei Su's birth mother and also the person in charge of Hongxian Divine City. The middle-aged man was the great guardian of Hongxian Divine City. His name was Ingjia. As for the young man from the dragon race, he was the most talented genius among the younger generation in Hongxian Divine City. His name was Hao Rui. City Lord Meiying, Mei Su, and Uncle Jian can be considered as old friends at first sight. They left Death Canyon before me. How could they have been ambushed and kidnapped by the people from Dark Rock Divine City? Zhuowen found it unbelievable. Death Canyon wasn't too far away from Hongxian Divine City. If Mei Su and the others were really ambushed, they would have sent out a signal. If Hongxian Divine City had sent out reinforcements immediately, they would have been able to make it in time to save Mei Su and the others. Meiying saw Zhuowen's doubts and said, Dark Rock Divine City has been planning this for a long time. Moreover, the Dark Rock Divine City sent out the Shadow Troop, a troop that specializes in speed. By the time we arrived, the Shadow Troop had already disappeared. The only clue is this letter that the Shadow Troop left for me. Meiying took out a letter and passed it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen didn't stand on ceremony. He took out the letter and started reading it. The letter was personally written by the city lord of Dark Rock Divine City, Shimu. The general idea was that they had kidnapped Mei Su and Jiang Yi. If Hongxian God City wanted to redeem the two of them, they would have to prepare 1,000,000 emerald stones and personally deliver it to Dark Rock Divine City. Meiying said worriedly, Our Hongxian Divine City is weaker than Dark Rock Divine City in the first place. Moreover, we don't have 1,000,000 jade stones in our Divine City. We won't be able to take out so many jade stones in such a short time. Furthermore, that Shamu also requested that we deliver it to Dark Rock Divine City within 10 days. Time is really too tight. City Lord, how many days is it from here to Dark Rock Divine City? Zhuowen suddenly asked. If we hurry, we can reach Dark Rock Divine City in about 4 days, Mei Ying said. There's enough time. City Lord, I've told you about the jasper or vein in Death Valley. As long as you can excavate the ore vein, you will have 1,000,000 jade stones. When the time comes, you can send them to Dark Rock Divine City. Zhuowen's gaze was calm. 1,000,000 jade stone or vein might seem like a lot, but as long as Hongxian God City gathered all the tribes to excavate the ore vein, they would be able to excavate the ore vein in 2 to 3 days. Mei Ying looked at Zhuowen with bright eyes and asked, Is Immortal Master Zhuo speaking the truth? There's no need for me to lie to you. Moreover, I've already said that the discovery of the jasper or vein was due to Miss Meisu's efforts. I believe City Lord knows her abilities better than I do. She was the one who found the ore vein. Zhuowen said indifferently. Mei Ying no longer doubted that Zhuowen was right. Meisu was her daughter. She naturally knew that Meisu had the special ability to sense the jasper or vein. There's no time to lose. I'll make some preparations and go with you to Death Valley to confirm it. Also, Ingjia, help me gather all the tribes near Death Valley. Call as many as you can and quickly excavate the ore vein. Mei Ying said. Great Guardian Ingjia hesitated and said, The jasper or vein is a secret between the divine cities. City Lord, if we gather all the tribes, won't we be revealing the ore vein to the public? Look at the situation now. Who cares if it's a secret between the divine cities? We must excavate the ore vein as soon as possible. Otherwise, Meisu and Jiang, you may die in Dark Rock City. Mei Ying said with a gloomy face. Great Guardianing Jie quickly nodded in agreement and left the meeting room in a hurry. He must have gone to arrange the manpower. The Dragon Tribe youth, Hao Rui, laughed dryly. He didn't dare to stay for long and left with Great Guardian Ingjia. Soon, only Zhuowen and Mei Ying were left in the meeting room. Zhuowen coughed dryly and said to Mei Ying with a smile, City Lord Mei Ying, I heard that there's a forbidden zone in the massacre, Heavenly Domain. The location of this forbidden zone is very mysterious. Only the City Lord knows the location of this place. I wonder if City Lord knows the location of this forbidden zone? Mei Ying turned his head and looked at Zhuowen from head to toe. His eyes were solemn as he said, You want to break into the forbidden zone and leave the massacre, Heavenly Domain? Zhuowen scratched his head and said, I do have such a plan. I just entered the massacre Heavenly Domain not long ago, and I just want to leave as soon as possible. There are still many important things that I need to do in the outside world. I can't stay in the massacre Heavenly Domain for too long. Mei Ying shook his head and said, I advise you to give up on this idea. The Forbidden Zone is a taboo in the massacre Heavenly Domain. Basically, no one who enters it survives. All of them have died in there. Didn't the massacre Heavenly Domain City Lord, Ziwei, break out of the Forbidden Zone? It seems that the Forbidden Zone isn't a complete dead end. Zhuowen said calmly. Mei Ying smiled bitterly and said, City Lord Ziwei is a freak and also a demon. I don't find it strange that he could get out, but I'm afraid it will be difficult. Let me tell you the truth. The 3 City Lords of the massacre Heavenly Domain didn't dare to break into the Forbidden Zone. It's not that we don't dare to try. It's just that we have tried in the past. We all narrowly escaped from the Forbidden Zone and survived. We deeply understand how terrifying the Forbidden Zone is. Zhuowen's eyes were calm as he said, City Lord Mei Ying, I came to Hongxian Divine City for only one purpose, and that is to obtain the exact location of the Forbidden Zone. No matter what you say, I must break into the Forbidden Zone. Mei Ying stared blankly at Zhuowen. He shook his head and said, There's no harm in telling you the location of the Forbidden Zone. However, You must first bring me to the Death Valley and find the jade or vein. Only then will we break into the Forbidden Zone. When the time comes, I will give you the map of the Forbidden Zone. Don't worry. Miss Mei-Su and Uncle Jiang are my friends. Since they are in trouble, I will not sit idly by. I will go to the Forbidden Zone after I rescue them, Zhuowen said calmly. Then I will thank you on behalf of Mei-Su. Mei-Ying smiled at Zhuowen. Time is of the essence. Let's go to the Death Valley, Zhuowen said. Chapter 3151. Sneak attack. Mei-Ying could not help but look at Zhuowen behind him when he saw the formation at the entrance of the Death Gorge. He asked, "Did you set up this formation before you left?" Zhuowen nodded and said, "I set up many similar formations in Death Canyon to prevent the people from Divine City from being disturbed by these killing beasts when they come to mine the mineral vein." Zhuowen and Mei-Ying spent almost a day rushing to Death Canyon from Divine City. Mei-Ying looked deeply at Zhuowen and said gratefully, "Celestial Master Zhuo, you are so considerate. Let's go in." Zhuowen walked to the entrance and opened the formation. He then led Mei-Ying into Death Canyon. The two of them had a smooth journey. After all, along the way, Zhuowen had basically set up powerful array formations. Soon, the two of them reached the depths of the canyon. There were still many rock pythons in the depths of the canyon. However, they were all blocked by the formation and could not enter. "There is a jade or vein below the cave," Zhuowen said. "Let's go in and take a look." Mei-Ying was cautious and walked slowly into the cave. When the two entered the cave, Mei-Ying's beautiful eyes could not help but light up when she saw the countless jade green or veins below the cave. Her face flushed with excitement. "It's really a jade or vein. This jade or vein is definitely the biggest one I've ever seen," Mei-Ying said excitedly. "City Governor Mei-Ying, there is one more thing that I have to confess to you. There is a stone room at the end of the jade or vein. There is a powerful skeleton in the stone room, and its strength should be around that of Master Tong Tian," Zhuowen suddenly said. Mei-Ying frowned and said, "You want me to help you deal with that powerful skeleton?" Zhuowen nodded and took out a jade bucket. This jade bucket contains the Crimson Moonstar essence. If City Governor Mei-Ying agrees to help me deal with that skeleton, this bucket of Crimson Moonstar essence is yours. Although Zhuowen was confident in his 12 divine fiends formation, he still felt uneasy. He felt that the green skeleton was not simple. "Scarlet Moonstar Wave milk?" Mei-Ying was shocked. She opened the lid of the tub and immediately discovered that the lotion in the tub was emitting an extremely dense energy. At the same time, a crimson moon and stars were reflected on the surface of the milk. She knew that this was the legendary Crimson Moon Star Wave milk, and it was an entire barrel. However, Mei-Ying soon realized that Zhuowen seemed to have taken out the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk out of thin air. She looked at Zhuowen in surprise and said, "Immortal Master Zhuo, could it be that your spatial artifact can be opened?" Just now, this barrel of Scarlet Moon Starwave milk was taken from your spatial artifact. Zhuowen smiled faintly and said, "I made a breakthrough in my array Dao in the Slaughter Heaven domain. After that breakthrough, I discovered that my divine soul had reached an unprecedented height. Then I could actually open the spatial divine tool on my body. Speaking of which, I don't know what's going on either." Zhuowen already had an explanation for his ability to take things out of his spatial artifact. He attributed it all to his identity as a divine master of Array Dao. He knew that with this explanation, Mei-Ying would not ask any more questions. After all, Mei-Ying knew nothing about Array Dao. Even if she knew Array Dao, she would not be able to reach his level. Mei-Ying looked at Zhuowen suspiciously. Although she did not believe Zhuowen's explanation, she knew that it was his secret, and she did not want to get to the bottom of it. "No wonder you didn't seem to be exhausted at all when you fought with Great Guardian Yingjie," It turns out that you can open your spatial artifact and use the Heavenly Path origin crystals inside. Mei Ying suddenly realized as she recalled Zhuowen's previous battle. Zhuowen smiled and did not explain further. Instead, he continued, "How about it? A barrel of Crimson Moon stellar wave milk is enough to invite a divine master to help." Mei Ying nodded and said, "I'll help you deal with the green skeleton. Leave the Crimson Moon stellar wave milk in your spatial artifact first. Pass it to me after you've dealt with the green skeleton." The Crimson Moon stellar wave milk was too precious. Even if it was Mei Ying, she could not ignore it. Moreover, the Crimson Moon stellar wave milk was even more precious and important to her in the Slaughter Heaven territory. How could she let go of such an opportunity? "Then let's work together happily. I hope we can get rid of the green skeleton." Zhuowen smiled, but he felt a sense of urgency in his heart. The green skeleton must have been a terrifying expert when it was alive, and it must have had something to do with the green-haired mummy. If it were not for his lack of strength, he would have killed the green-haired mummy long ago. He would not have given the green-haired mummy the chance to leave the 8 heavens. Speaking of which, he still did not know where the green-haired mummy had gone. He also did not know the exact origin of the green-haired mummy. Soon, Zhuowen and Mei Ying arrived at the entrance of the stone chamber. Other than the dried-up pool, there was nothing else in the stone chamber. Mei Ying looked at Zhuowen, puzzled. Didn't he ask her to deal with the green skeleton? Now, there was nothing in the stone chamber, let alone the so-called skeleton. Zhuowen ignored Mei Ying's puzzlement and looked at the left side of the pool. He found that the 12 divine beings killing formation that he had set up before he left was still intact. It was not even activated. Zhuowen frowned. He did not expect the green skeleton to be so cowardly that it did not even activate the 12 divine beings killing formation. It's in the 12 divine beings killing formation that I set up. Moreover, there is a micro-world in the stone chamber. That guy is hiding in that micro-world. Let's see how I force him out. Zhuowen strode forward and came to the left side of the pool. He formed a sword with his right hand and pointed at the void in front of him. The power of space-time gushed out from his fingertips. Suddenly, the surrounding space-time was completely distorted. It was like a fried dough twist, constantly twisting and intertwining. Zhuowen could clearly sense that the small world hidden in the depths of the mountain was collapsing. Boom! Suddenly, a thunderous attack blasted out from the void behind Zhuowen, directly sweeping towards the middle of Zhuowen's back. Zhuowen's face changed drastically. He felt that his life was in danger. The power was too terrifying. It was even more powerful than the power of an early master of heaven ascension. Just as the power was about to hit Zhuowen's back, a dim light flashed by Zhuowen's side. Then, a slender hand grabbed Zhuowen's arm. When Zhuowen opened his eyes, he found that he had left the range of the 12 divine beings killing formation. At that moment, the micro-world in the 12 divine beings killing formation had completely collapsed. A hideous green skeleton appeared in the formation. Chapter 3152. Encircling the green skeleton. "Thank you, City Governor Mei Ying." Zhuowen cupped his fists and thanked Mei Ying solemnly. He knew that if Mei Ying had not used the soul ambush to pull him away, he would have been ambushed by the green skeleton. With the full power of the green skeleton's attack, Zhuowen would have been seriously injured, even if he did not die. Mei Ying waved her hand and looked at the green skeleton seriously. She said, "Master Immortal Zhuo, you have offended something terrible. This guy's aura is very strong and his strength is above mine." Zhuowen was shocked. He knew that Mei Ying's cultivation was at the peak of the early stage of the Master of Heaven. She was not far from the middle stage of the Master of Heaven. Now that Mei Ying said that she was weaker than the green skeleton, did it mean that the green skeleton was at least a middle stage of the Master of Heaven? Zhuowen's expression was serious, and he found it unbelievable. When he first saw the green skeleton, its aura was very weak and it was not as strong as it was now. Zhuowen estimated that the green skeleton strength was at most at the early stage of the Master of Heaven. It was not as strong as Mei Ying. But now, the strength that the green skeleton had displayed during its sneak attack had shocked Zhuowen. It was at least at the middle stage of the Master of Heaven realm. Humph! You brought a Master of Heaven to help you this time? The green skeleton's voice was gloomy. It had been preparing for the attack for a long time, and it was supposed to be foolproof. However, it was ruined by Mei Ying, and it was exasperated. At that moment, the 12 divine beings' formation had been activated, and the shadows of the 12 ancestors of sorcerers surrounded the green skeleton. Previously, the green skeleton had a small world to hide in. In addition, the green skeleton did not touch the 12 divine fiends' formation at all. Therefore, the formation was not triggered at all. However, the small world had been destroyed by Zhuowen using the power of space-time. The green skeleton had nowhere to hide and could only face the 12 divine beings' formation head-on. You have been hiding your strength all this time? Zhuowen's eyes were dark as he stared coldly at the green skeleton. The green skeleton didn't argue with Zhuo when too much on this issue. Instead, it sneered and said, "Little guy, your 12 divine fiends' formation is just a facade. It won't be difficult for me to break it. Now I'll give you a chance to live. Release this 12 overseer deities, killing formation, and let me leave. I won't care about your rudeness to me before. Of course, you snatched my pool of Crimson Moon Starwave milk. I'll be generous and treat it as a gift to you," the green skeleton said indifferently. When the green skeleton said this, Mei Ying's beautiful eyes revealed a trace of surprise. She didn't expect Zhuowen to have obtained a pool of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. No wonder Zhuowen was able to take out a bucket of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk so easily. Zhuowen's face darkened. How could he not see that the green skeleton was trying to sow discord between them? City Governor Mei Ying, I did obtain a pool of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. As long as you help me get rid of this old guy, I'm willing to give you 1/3 of the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk as your reward," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. Mei Ying took a deep look at Zhuowen and smiled sweetly. Since Immortal Master Zhuo is so generous, Mei Ying will do her best to help you. I just hope that Immortal Master Zhuo will keep his word. Zhuowen felt helpless. The Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk was too precious. Even Mei Ying, who looked like an otherworldly fairy, could not resist the temptation of the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk. City Governor Mei Ying, don't worry. I'll keep my word. If I do, I'll lose my Tao and die, Zhuowen said seriously. Haha, Immortal Master Zhuo's oath is a little heavy. You don't have to do this. Of course, I believe in your character. Mei Ying smiled. Zhuowen had a smile on his face, but he was cursing in his heart. Since you believe in me, you won't remind me to keep my word. Since you've reminded me, I can only use an oath to show my determination. City Governor Mei Ying, I'll completely activate all the power of the 12 divine beings killing formation later. At that time, you and I will enter the formation together and take down this old guy. As Zhuowen spoke, he formed a seal with his hands. Waves of rune-like energy floated out of his hands and poured into the 12 divine beings killing formation in front of him like rain. The blood-red boundary, where the great formation of the 12 divine fiends was located, seemed to have materialized. An entire boundary was filled with a terrifying, murderous aura. The 12 ancestral sorcerers' illusionary shadows that existed in the great formation even let out earth-shattering roars. Boom! Boom! The silhouettes of the 12 ancestral sorcerers struck at the same time, attacking the green skeleton in the center of the formation. Violent energy spilled out in all directions, and the terrifying pressure crushed the surrounding space, causing the space to seem rather oppressive. City Governor Mei Ying, let's attack together. After the 12 divine beings killing formation was completely activated, Zhuowen stomped his right foot and plunged into the formation like a bolt of lightning. Mei Ying's eyes were solemn as he followed closely behind Zhuowen. Boom! 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 The 12 ancestral sorcerers' phantoms threw out a punch one after another. 12 attacks swept out, creating a terrifying storm in the space and raging in all directions. The green skeleton roared to the sky, and its body burst into a dazzling green light. Immediately, it stomped its right foot and dodged the joint attack of the 12 ancestral sorcerers' phantoms like a ghost. Then, the green skeleton's body flickered in the air and finally appeared in front of the head of one of the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms. Then the green skeleton clenched its right fist and smashed it hard. The blazing green light energy gathered on the surface of the green skeleton's right fist, making the green skeleton's fist strength look as if it could destroy the world. When the fist hit the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms, the phantom's head was smashed into nothingness. The huge body of the ancestral sorcerer fell to the ground with its back facing the sky. Bang! However, the green skeleton's punch was not without a price. It was seized by another ancestral sorcerer's phantoms, and its waist was hit hard by a punch. Violent energy overflowed in all directions, and the green skeleton was directly smashed to the ground. Smoke and dust rose up, and even the line of sight could not be seen clearly. That ancestral sorcerer roared furiously and threw out another punch toward the deep pit. It was obvious that it wanted to take advantage of the situation and kill it. A green light flashed, and the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms stopped in their tracks. A huge green wound appeared on its chest. The green light in the wound continued to spread and eventually covered the entire body of the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms. Then, the huge body of the ancestral sorcerer's phantoms burst open. The burst of light was a strange green color, which looked demonic and terrifying. In just a few breaths' time, 2 of the 12 ancestral sorcerer's phantoms were killed by the green skeleton. Chapter 3153. Terrifying Heartbeat Boom. The other 10 ancestral sorcerer phantoms rushed over and attacked the green skeleton with terrifying attacks. Unfortunately, the green skeleton easily dodged all of them. The powerful attacks left deep and sinister marks on the ground. Zhuowen waved his sleeve, and the 10 ancestral sorcerer phantoms stopped attacking. Instead, they landed behind Zhuowen. The green skeleton stood opposite him and revealed a mocking smile. "Little guy, didn't I tell you? The 12 divine beings killing Array can't trap me. If I destroy all of your 12 ancestral sorcerer phantoms, the Array will collapse on its own. City Governor Maying, help me stall this old guy. I must destroy him today. I'll leave these 30 bottles of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk with you. Once you've exhausted your energy, you can absorb the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk directly." Zhuowen said to Maying as he took out 30 bottles of Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk and handed them to Maying. Zhuowen knew that it was a critical moment. He would not be reluctant to part with them. Destroying the green skeleton was the most important thing now. Maying was surprised by Zhuowen's generosity. He took the Crimson Moon Stellar Wave milk and unleashed the powerful aura of a master of Screech. Maying stomped on the ground with his right foot and dashed out like an immortal. His slender and jade-like hands blasted out, carrying with them the power to destroy the heavens and earth. "You're just a 9-tailed fox. How dare you be so presumptuous in front of me? You're courting death." The green skeleton's voice was filled with anger. He took a step forward and punched Maying with his right fist. Boom! Maying clenched his hand into a palm and blasted out. Terrifying energy gushed out from his slender palm. The moment the fist and palm collided, the entire Death Canyon shook. The soil in Death Canyon was extremely hard. Even a master of Screech would have to spend a lot of effort to dig to such a deep place. However, Mei-Ing and the green skeleton had only just exchanged a blow, and there was already such a terrifying shockwave. Thump! 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 Mei-Ing let out a muffled groan and retreated continuously, but the green skeleton remained as still as a mountain. The moment Mei-Ing retreated, the green skeleton suddenly stepped forward, intending to follow up with another attack to severely injure Mei Ying. However, the moment the green skeleton chased after Mei Ying, the remaining 10 wizard ancestors received Zhuowen's order and came to Mei Ying's aid. For a moment, the green skeleton was entangled and could not catch up with Mei Ying. Zhuowen took out the Hou-Yi Divine Bow and knocked the Hou-Yi Divine Arrow on the bowstring. With a whoosh, Hou-Yi's godly arrow shot out with shocking killing intent towards the green skeleton. After shooting the first arrow, Zhuowen didn't stop and took out the second Hou-Yi Divine Arrow. This second arrow was even more terrifying than the first. Whoosh! Another swishing noise could be heard as the second Hou-Yi Divine Arrow flashed across the air, leaving a greenish-yellow streak of light in the air, flying straight towards the green skeleton. The green skeleton was entangled by the 10 wizard ancestors and looked down on Zhuowen, so it didn't guard against Zhuowen at all. When the first Hou-Yi Divine Arrow shot into the green skeleton's body with terrifying killing intent, the green skeleton was immediately sent flying. The violent killing intent rushed into the skeleton's body, and a series of crackling sounds could be heard. "It's the Hou-Yi Divine Arrow. Where did you get it from?" The green skeleton immediately recognized the bloody arrow as it was sent flying. It looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly expression. Unfortunately, when it looked at Zhuowen, the first thing it saw was not Zhuowen, but the second Hou-Yi Divine Arrow. The green skeleton couldn't help but curse, but the second arrow was too fast. It didn't even give the green skeleton a chance to curse before it rushed into its body. Crack! The 2 Hou-Yi Divine Arrows pierced into the green skeleton's body. Zhuowen could clearly see that 4 or 5 of the green skeleton's ribs were broken. Bang! The green skeleton fell to the ground in a sorry state and rolled several times before coming to a stop. Zhuowen's expression was somewhat unsightly. He had thought that the Hou-Yi Divine Arrows would be enough to seriously injure the green skeleton. But in fact, the green skeleton was indeed injured, but the injuries weren't very serious. "Little brat, you've angered me, and the consequences of angering me are very frightening." The green skeleton abruptly pulled out the 2 Hou-Yi Divine Arrows from its chest, completely ignoring its broken ribs. At this moment, Zhuowen noticed that the green skeleton's heart in its chest had begun to beat violently, and with every beat of the heart, Zhuowen's mood became a little more irritable. The surrounding space also trembled violently. It was as if the heart had the ability to control everything in the surroundings. Suddenly, the heartbeat became extremely fast, and terrifying ripples appeared in the space. Zhuowen's expression changed drastically. He knelt on one knee on the ground. At this moment, an unprecedented amount of energy enveloped his body, causing him to kneel on the ground involuntarily. It was difficult for him to bear. At the same time, Zhuowen also noticed that Mei Ying was standing not far away. His entire body was trembling, and cold sweat was dripping down from his forehead. He knew that Mei Ying was also enduring a terrifying amount of pressure like him. If not for the fact that Mei Ying was more powerful than Zhuowen, he would be kneeling on one knee on the ground like Zhuowen. Damn it! How could mere ants force me to use such a trump card? Damn it, damn it! The green skeleton didn't show any joy of suppressing Zhuowen and Mei Ying. Instead, it was flustered and exasperated. Obviously, the green skeleton had to pay a great price for using such a trump card. Boom! The green skeleton took a step forward to the nearest ancestral sorcerer shadow. It clenched its right hand into a fist and blasted the head of the ancestral sorcerer shadow into pieces. "Today, I will make you pay a terrible price. Just 2 mere ants." Boom, boom, boom. As the green skeleton spoke, it quickly threw out 3 punches and destroyed the other 3 ancestral sorcerer shadows. The green skeleton continued to attack. When it had destroyed the head of the last ancestral sorcerer shadow, it slowly came to Zhuowen. Its hollow eyes were flickering with green ghost fire as it stared coldly at Zhuowen. "Don't worry, I won't kill you so soon. I'll first extract your soul and whip it with a thunder whip for 49 days. Then, I'll burn it with the refining flame for 81 days. Finally, I'll use the ghost wind to sweep it for 108 days. I'll let you enjoy all the extreme pain in this world before scattering your soul." The green skeleton's voice was cold. It stretched out its right hand and pointed at Zhuowen's glabella. However, it soon realized that something was wrong. This was because a strange black gas suddenly surged out from Zhuowen's body. Bang! In the black gas, a strong wind rushed towards the green skeleton's glabella. Boom! Chapter 3154. The might of the Yama ghost diagrammed the green skeleton, stabilized its body, and its gaze fell on Zhuowen. It was shocked to find that a black scroll was floating above Zhuowen's head. The black scroll slowly opened. Suddenly, an endless amount of black gas gushed out from the scroll and formed the image of a huge black skull. Boom! The black skull opened its mouth and rushed out toward the green skeleton. The green skeleton's expression changed slightly. It actually felt an ominous and threatening feeling from the black skull. Bang! The green skeleton suddenly punched out and hit the black skull head-on. A violent power poured out. But the moment it punched out, the green skeleton regretted it. He discovered that the black skull was formless and formless. The moment he punched out, the black skull collapsed and turned into countless wisps of black gas. Then, the collapsed black gas instantly appeared behind it and quickly gathered into a black skull. It opened its mouth and bit at the green skeleton's head. The green skeleton made a prompt decision and turned its head. The black skull directly bit the green skeleton's shoulder. The powerful bite force bit off the green skeleton's shoulder. The green skeleton hurriedly retreated. It raised its head and screamed. The moment its shoulder was bitten off, it felt as if a part of its divine soul was torn off. At this moment, the green skeleton finally realized how strange the black skull released by the black scroll was. As long as this black skull caused damage to one's body, the damage would be directly reflected back to one's divine soul, causing severe damage to the divine soul. This thing was too strange and unpredictable. At this moment, Zhuowen was wrapped in countless black gas. The black scroll opened and floated above his head, flickering with a strange ink-black light. After the green skeleton used its heart to erupt with a terrifying pressure, Zhuowen took out the Yama ghost diagram. The power unleashed by the Yama demon portrait was indeed powerful, causing Zhuowen to be shocked. Moreover, under the black gas, the pressure from the green skeleton's heart did not affect him as much as before. Mei-Ying looked at Zhuowen, who was not far away, in shock, especially when he saw Zhuowen slowly stand up and walk toward the green skeleton. The shock on his face reached its peak. The green skeleton used its heart as a medium to erupt with a terrifying pressure. Mei-Ying knew very well how terrifying it was. One had to know that even though she was still standing, she was actually forcefully holding on. If she were to take a step forward now, she would not be able to do it at all. She was afraid that the moment she took a step forward, she would directly fall to the ground and would not be able to get up. Moreover, even in her current state, she was barely holding on. She could fall to the ground at any time and could not get up. Is this a divine artifact? The green skeleton hurriedly retreated. It looked at Zhuowen, who was slowly walking over, and the black skull floating in the air with fear in its eyes. This was the first time it had seen a divine artifact that could directly injure one's spiritual soul. It was really strange. Zhuowen sneered as he glanced at the green skeleton. This Yama demon diagram was a terrifying divine artifact in the Xian Mi heavenly domain. Even among transcending heaven-grade divine artifacts, it was a top-notch existence. Although the green skeleton had an extraordinary origin, it was still seriously injured, especially its spiritual soul, which was probably badly damaged. The Yama ghost diagram was just right to restrain this kind of guy. Ghost chain kill. Zhuowen endured the excruciating pain and roared. Suddenly, Strange black chains flew out from the black scroll floating above his head. There were more than 10 of these black chains, which seemed endless. They surged out and rushed toward the green skeleton at an extremely fast speed. The green skeleton's face changed slightly. It did not dare to get close to Zhuowen. It turned around and fled out of the stone room. However, the moment the green skeleton escaped to the door of the stone room, a dim light flashed. Then the green skeleton realized that the woman in white, who had been suppressed by the pressure from his heart, had suddenly appeared in front of it. Boom! Mei Ying's jade-like hand slammed into the green skeleton's chest like a butterfly flying through flowers. Violent energy poured out. The green skeleton was obviously not prepared for Mei Ying and was hit directly by her attack. Immediately it flew backward. Whoosh! 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 The black chains behind it were like poisonous snakes, entangling the green skeleton in an instant. The moment they entangled the green skeleton, the latter immediately screamed in pain. His spiritual soul was in pain at this moment, as if it was being pricked by needles. It numbed his nerves, causing him to twitch all over and not dare to move. Mei Ying spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. Her pretty face was pale. Just now, she had used her innate ability, Spirit Assault, which allowed her to instantly appear in front of the green skeleton and stop it in time. However, she had paid a heavy price. Her whole body felt like it was falling apart. She was crushed by the terrifying pressure of the green skeleton and could not move at all. The green skeleton's spiritual soul was constantly being stimulated and weakened by the ghost chains. It screamed and struggled more and more violently, but the fear in its eyes became more and more intense. Its spiritual soul was already severely injured. Now that it was being stimulated and weakened by the strange divine weapon, it knew that if it did not do something, its spiritual soul would really be finished. At this moment, Zhuowen's 7 orifices began to bleed. His eyes were red as he stared at the green skeleton. The strength of the green skeleton's spiritual soul was somewhat beyond his expectations. With just this one attack, his spiritual soul was also severely injured. The ghost chains of the Yama ghost diagram was a strange move that hurt the enemy by 1,000, but also hurt the user by 800. When it severely injured the enemy's spiritual soul, Zhuowen's spiritual soul would also be damaged. Of course, Zhuowen only suffered about half the damage of the enemy, but it was still very painful, especially when encountering an enemy whose spiritual soul was more terrifying than Zhuowen's. It was simply self-torture for Zhuowen. It might even be suicide. Zhuowen kept swallowing divine elixirs to recover his spiritual soul. His eyes were full of determination. This time, he must completely destroy the green skeleton. He had a premonition that if he let the green skeleton go today, it might be a big hidden danger for him in the future. Therefore, this guy could not be left alive. Little brat, I'll tell you a secret. As long as you let me go, this secret of mine can give you a great opportunity. The green skeleton endured the pain and said to Zhuowen in a low voice. Zhuowen did not pay attention to the green skeleton at all. Instead, he continued to control the ghost chains and kept entangling the green skeleton. At the same time, the huge black skeleton slowly moved forward and floated toward the green skeleton. Its huge upper and lower jaws were exaggeratedly opened. Chapter 3155. Possession. I know where to find the Panga banner. The Panga banner belonged to the ancient god of creation, Pengu. Aren't you tempted? The green skeleton suddenly shouted. The corners of Zhuowen's mouth curled up into a mocking smile. With a thought, the black skull swallowed the green skull in an instant. The Panga banner was in his spiritual soul. The green skeleton had to be more skillful in its blackmail. The green skeleton screamed in agony. Then its scream stopped abruptly. Poof! Countless wisps of black smoke were sucked into the Yama ghost diagram, and a dozen or so ghost chains also retracted. Bang! The green skeleton fell to the ground, motionless. The green flames in the skeleton's eyes had already been extinguished. Zhuowen knew that the remaining spiritual soul of the green skeleton had been completely destroyed by the Yama ghost portrait. Zhuowen fell to the ground in a sorry state. Blood flowed out of his orifices, and his consciousness was blurred. Nearly 80% of his divine soul had been shattered by the Yama demon portrait, and only the remaining 20% of his divine soul was supporting him to retain a trace of consciousness. With the destruction of the green skeleton's spiritual soul, the terrifying coercion in the space disappeared completely. Mei Ying felt relieved. She hurried to Zhuowen's side and asked worriedly, "Immortal Master Zhuo, are you all right? Get me out of here." Zhuowen's voice was weak as he said to Mei Ying. Mei Ying could see that Zhuowen was in a bad state. Without saying anything, she helped Zhuowen out of the stone chamber. However, what they didn't notice was that a trace of dark green undercurrent suddenly gushed out from the green skeleton that had fallen on the stone chamber and was completely lifeless. This undercurrent suddenly rushed out and swept towards the back of Zhuowen's head. The speed of the dark green undercurrent was so fast that Zhuowen and Mei Ying did not notice it at first. When they noticed it, the dark green undercurrent had already penetrated into the back of Zhuowen's head. "Immortal Master Zhuo, are you all right?" Mei Ying sensed that something was amiss and immediately looked at Zhuowen. He noticed that the latter's forehead was covered in cold sweat and he looked like he was in pain. Zhuowen did not answer. At this moment, his soul was like a lump of paste and his consciousness was starting to blur. The green undercurrent that had burrowed into Zhuowen's soul was like a maggot that began to wantonly destroy his soul. "Brat, you don't know that I still have a trick up my sleeve. I really didn't expect that an ant like you would actually possess such a strange divine artifact. Moreover, he even possesses the inherited divine artifact of the great shaman Hou. How extraordinary! But from now on, all the secrets in your body belong to me, and although your physical body is barely passable, it's still passable." The green undercurrent let out a sharp, ear-piercing sound that was filled with pride. Zhuowen recognized the owner of the voice. It was the green skeleton. He really didn't expect this guy to have such a trick up his sleeve. Most likely, this guy had been preparing to take over his body for a long time. His previous performance was just to numb him. However, this green skeleton was very cautious. It kept moving forward in Zhuowen's soul and was always vigilant. "Old guy, as long as you don't take over my body, everything is negotiable. I can give you everything I have." Zhuowen's voice became a little frightened and flustered. Zhuowen was naturally not really afraid of being taken over. His soul had the Panga banner. If this guy really took over his body, he would be the unlucky one. However, this green skeleton was very cautious. After entering his soul, the first thing it did was not to take over his body, but to observe his soul. Zhuowen secretly scolded this guy for being too vigilant. If this old guy directly took over his body, he would immediately activate the Panga banner. At that time, this old guy's soul would not be able to escape. Now you know how to be afraid? Unfortunately, it's too late. The green skeleton felt the fear in Zhuowen's divine thought and couldn't help laughing complacently. Immediately, it relaxed its vigilance and began to take over Zhuowen's body. The green undercurrent became larger and larger, and the light emitted from it became more and more blazing. It filled Zhuowen's soul. However, the moment the green undercurrent spread to the whole soul, the green skeleton immediately screamed. In the depths of Zhuowen's soul, an ancient and powerful energy suddenly surged out and suppressed all the energy of the green undercurrent in an instant. "What kind of energy is this?" The green skeleton screamed, and its voice was full of disbelief. In front of this ancient and powerful energy, it had no power to resist. It was as if this energy wanted it to die, and it had no choice but to die. Then the green skeleton's divine thought found that a big banner swept out from the depths of Zhuowen's soul. On the banner, there was a supreme picture of the great god Pango holding the heaven-splitting divine axe in his hand. Outside the banner, There were mysterious prophecies circling around it, and inside the banner, there were heaven-splitting talismans looming. The five-colored light illuminated the sky, and Panga's divine might shook the world. The moment it saw this big banner, the green skeleton couldn't help but scream, "Is this the Panga banner? It's actually the Panga banner? How is this possible? This thing is actually in your soul." The green skeleton finally knew why Zhuowen showed a mocking smile when it said that it wanted to provide clues about the Panga banner. It turned out that the Panga banner that it was talking about was actually in this guy's body. "No, let me go this time. I was wrong. I'm willing to bow down to you and obey your orders, as long as you let me go." The green skeleton revealed a look of despair. It had lived for a very long time and knew how terrifying the Panga banner was. It could be said that if it encountered the Panga banner now, it would definitely die. There was no chance of survival at all. The only thing it could do now was to kneel down and beg the young man in front of it for mercy and spare its life. Unfortunately, the green skeleton was answered with a long silence. The pressure of the Panga banner became more and more terrifying. The green skeleton's divine thought was constantly shrinking and being consumed by the power of the Panga banner. In the end, the Panga banner shook violently in Zhuowen's soul, and a terrifying energy spread in his soul, expelling and destroying all the green undercurrents. Uft! Zhuowen spat out another mouthful of blood. Of the remaining 20% of his soul, another 10% had been destroyed in the battle of possession just now. His head was in so much pain that he was almost dying and he was about to faint. It was also at this moment that the Panga banner suddenly swept to the center of his soul. Then a gentle milky white energy surged out from the Panga banner. This milky white energy fused into Zhuowen's soul, and like a clear stream, it quickly repaired Zhuowen's soul. After an unknown period of time, the Panga banner slowly retracted and hid in the depths of Zhuowen's soul. Zhuowen suddenly opened his eyes. In his eyes, an extremely bright light flickered. The energy that the Panga banner had given him this time was really of great help to his soul. At this moment, his soul had almost undergone a transformation and had made great progress. Chapter 3156. Dark Rock City. After opening his eyes, Zhuowen noticed that there were two more people in the stone room besides Meiying. Zhuowen was no stranger to these two people. They were Hongxian City's great guardian Jie and Haorui from the dragon tribe. When the three of them saw that Zhuowen had woken up, they relaxed. "Immortal Master Zhuo, you are finally awake." Meiying did not get close to Zhuowen. Instead, she stood a distance away from Zhuowen. Her beautiful eyes scanned Zhuowen, and she asked with caution, "Immortal Master Zhuo, what happened just now?" Zhuowen felt helpless. He knew what Meiying meant. She probably knew that he had been possessed by the green skeleton. She was not sure if the possession was successful. Zhuowen spread out his hands and said, "City Lord Meiying, don't worry. I was not possessed. That old fellow failed in the end." Although Zhuowen had explained, Meiying still didn't believe him. Zhuowen had no choice but to tell Meiying about the misunderstanding that had happened in Hongxian Divine City in order to prove that he hadn't been possessed. After all, after the possession, one would become another person. Zhuowen's memories could not be so clear. After hearing Zhuowen's detailed explanation, Meiying finally believed that Zhuowen had not been possessed. "How long have I been unconscious?" Zhuowen looked at Great Guardian Jie and Haorui from the dragon tribe before asking Meiying, "You have been unconscious for 2 days. In these 2 days we have mined all the jade stones in this mine. There are a total of 2 million jade stones." Speaking of the jade stone mine, Meiying's eyes were filled with excitement. "Are you planning to go to Dark Rock City?" Zhuowen saw that the three of them were fully armed, and he knew that Meiying and the rest were planning to bring the 1 million jade stones to Dark Rock City. "Yes, we originally planned to wait for you for another day to see if you would wake up. If you didn't wake up, we would have gone to Dark Rock City first," Meiying said bluntly. Since you plan to set off, count me in, Zhuowen said with a smile. The matter at the Death Canyon had been completely resolved. After rescuing Mei Su and the others, Zhuowen planned to break into the forbidden area of the Slaughter Heaven region and leave this damned place for good. But before I leave, City Governor Mei, I have something to say to you alone. Zhuowen looked at Yingjie and the young man from the dragon tribe and said in a deep voice, Great Guardian Yingjie and the young man from the dragon clan were tactful enough to leave the stone chamber. After the two of them left, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and took out 30 barrels of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk, saying, City Lord Mei, we were able to deal with the green skeleton this time because of your help. This is the reward we agreed on in advance. So many, Mei was stunned. She knew that Zhuowen had a lot of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk, but she thought that there were only a dozen barrels. However, Zhuowen had taken out more than 30 barrels. This was only 1/3 of the Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk that Zhuowen had with him. Didn't this mean that there were more than 100 barrels of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk on him? At this moment, Mei felt a little embarrassed. The Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk was too precious. A small bottle of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk was already priceless, let alone the 30 barrels in front of her. City Governor Mei, you are welcome. I, Zhuowen, have always been a man of my words. Since I have promised you, I will naturally do it. I will not lie. Zhuowen looked serious as he pushed the 30 barrels of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk to Mei. Mei Ying's beautiful eyes were filled with gratitude. At the same time, she thought more highly of Zhuowen. To be honest, the world of cultivation was very cruel. This cruelty was even more vivid in the Slaughter Heaven region. In order to fight for resources, many brothers had turned against each other and friends had killed each other. However, Zhuowen had given her so much Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk just because he had promised her. Mei knew that Zhuowen was an extremely principled person. Thank you, Immortal Master Zhua. Mei kept the Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk. She summoned her trusted subordinates to transport the 30 barrels of Crimson Moon Star Ripple milk back to Hongxian City. Then, she left Death Canyon with Zhuowen. After walking out of the canyon, Zhuowen realized that there were more than 1,000 cavalrymen waiting outside the canyon. Behind these cavalrymen were groups of carriages. Behind each group of carriages, there were large amounts of emerald stones. However, these emerald stones were covered with white cloth and tied with ropes. Zhuowen looked at these carriages and felt strange. Ever since he had started cultivating, cultivators had basically used spiritual rings to store things. Only the mortal world would need a group of carriages to transport goods. It was rare in the world of cultivation. However, in the Slaughter Heaven region, it was too rare. Moreover, it was a group of cultivators imitating the mortals. After all, spatial artifacts were completely ineffective here. They could only use such primitive methods to transport goods. Of course, Zhuowen's great world was big enough. He could store all the emerald stones in his great world. However, if he did that, the fact that he could open a spatial artifact would become known to everyone. This was not a good thing for him. Therefore, Zhuowen really wouldn't do such a stupid thing. 1 million emerald stones have been prepared. This time, the fastest cavalryman in Hongxian City will be in charge of the transportation. It will take about 4 days to reach Dark Rock Divine City from Death Canyon. By then, we will be able to reach Dark Rock Divine City smoothly. Mei took a dragon horse from a cavalryman. With a kick of her right leg, she mounted the dragon horse. Zhuowen also took a dragon horse and mounted it. He walked side by side with Mei to the front of the group. Great Guardian Yingjie and the young man from the dragon tribe followed closely behind them. Let's go. Our destination is Dark Rock Divine City. Mei Ying's cold voice rang in everyone's ears. Then Mei Ying pulled on the reins. The dragon horse at the front neighed and galloped away. The group behind, Mei Ying followed, closely behind. The sound of iron hooves thundered across the ground. For days later, Mei Ying and Zhuowen rode side by side on their dragon horses and stopped on a small hill. A large group of cavalrymen stood behind the hill. Their eyes were filled with unparalleled fighting spirit. Is that Dark Rock divine city? Zhuowen gazed into the distance. There lay a gigantic city that was not the slightest bit inferior to the Hongxian divine city. The huge city looked like a huge meteorite. It was oval in shape. On the surface of the huge city, there was a dark red flowing light. At first glance, one could tell that it was a powerful killing array. Above the city walls of Dark Rock Divine City, Zhuowen saw groups of warriors in black armor. The leader was a middle-aged man with a solemn expression. The middle-aged man was in a black robe. His eyes were as deep as the sea. He looked at the small hill with a faint smile on his face. Yes, this is Dark Rock Divine City. Let's go. Chapter 3157. Meng Tiangan Mei Ying led the team to the city gates of Dark Rock City. The city gates of Dark Rock City glowed with gold and were exceptionally dazzling. The complex and mysterious patterns on the surface of the city gates gave the city gates a mysterious and powerful aura. However, the city gates of Dark Rock City were tightly shut and had no intention of opening because of Mei Ying and the rest. A middle-aged man in a black robe stood on the city walls and looked down at the team of riders. He clapped his hands and said, "City Lord Mei Ying, thank you for your hard work. You have traveled thousands of miles from Hongxian Divine City to Dark Rock City. I welcome you on behalf of the entire Dark Rock City." Although the middle-aged man was welcoming Mei Ying, there was no warmth on his face. Instead, his expression was cold and gloomy. He is the great guardian of Dark Rock City, Meng Tiangan. His strength is about the same as Ying Jie's. He is also at the peak of the half-step Tongtian sovereign realm. Mei Ying introduced him to Zhuowen in a low voice. Then he lifted his head and looked coldly at Meng Tiangan. He said, "Great Guardian Meng, I think you know the purpose of my visit today. Are you still not going to open the city gates?" Meng Tiangan glanced at Mei Ying and said, "Have you brought the 1,000,000 emerald stones?" Mei Ying did not speak. He clapped his hands, and the riders behind lifted the white cloth on the carriage. Piles of emerald stones that were emitting emerald light appeared in front of Meng Tiangan. Meng Tiangan's eyes shone with greed when he saw the emerald stones. Although he did not carefully count the number of jade stones, he did a rough estimate in his heart. There should be more than 1,000,000 jade stones here. I have kept my promise and brought the emerald stones that you want. Where are my daughter and Jiang Yi now?" Mei Ying asked coldly. Meng Tiangan laughed and said, "City Lord Mei Ying has kept his promise. Naturally, we will not be unreasonable. Miss Mei Su and brother Jiang Yi are being treated well by our city lord. City Lord Mei Ying, if you don't mind, you can enter the city first. It won't be too late to leave after we treat you well." Mei Ying's face darkened. She understood what Meng Tiangan meant. She wanted them to enter the Dark Rock Divine City. However, Mei Ying was also very clear that once they entered the Dark Rock Divine City, it would be really difficult for them to come out again. The array formations and restrictions in Dark Rock Divine City were extremely complicated. Their standard was even higher than that of Hongxian Divine City. It would be too easy to trap them. Just as Mei Ying was hesitating, Zhuowen said in a deep voice, "City Lord Mei Ying, agree with this person. Let's enter the city first." Mei Ying was startled. She looked at Zhuowen and felt a little conflicted. "You've forgotten that I'm a divine formation master. There are indeed many formations and restrictions in Dark Rock Divine City, but in my opinion, they are nothing but child's play. This time, I can help you rescue Miss Mei Su and Uncle Jiang. Trust me," Zhuowen said in a low voice. Mei Ying looked deeply at Zhuowen and her eyes were filled with determination. She could only trust Zhuowen now. Moreover, Zhuowen was right. According to Meng Tiangan, if they didn't enter the Dark Rock Divine City, They wouldn't even be able to see Mei Su and the rest. "Open the city gates," Mei Ying said to Meng Tiangong. "Haha, City Lord Mei Ying is indeed straightforward." Meng Tiangong laughed heartily and immediately ordered his subordinates to open the city gates. After the city gates were opened, Mei Ying commanded from the front as he led the cavalry team behind him into the interior of the dark rock divine city. Meng Tiangong was already waiting behind the city gates. He took the initiative to walk forward and wanted to lead Mei Ying's dragon horse. Unfortunately, Mei Ying pulled on the reins and stopped the dragon horse in its tracks. This made Meng Tiangong, who had stretched out his hand, feel a little awkward. However, in order to hide his embarrassment, Meng Tiangong's frozen right hand reached out toward Zhuowen's dragon horse. Obviously, Meng Tiangong was trying to find a way out. His original intention was not to lead Zhuowen's dragon horse. Zhuowen, who was riding on the dragon horse, revealed a sarcastic smile. He squeezed the dragon horse's belly with his legs, and immediately the dragon horse neighed and galloped forward. Meng Tiangong, who originally wanted to lead Zhuowen's dragon horse, changed his expression and wanted to retreat. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's timing was too accurate. The moment Meng Tiangong retreated, the dragon horse had already charged forward and knocked into Meng Tiangong's chest. Meng Tiangong groaned and rolled on the ground in a sorry state. When he stood up, he saw that Zhuowen had already stopped in front of him. "Sorry, this is my first time riding a dragon horse. I couldn't control it well." Zhuowen smiled at Meng Tiangong. However, there was no hint of apology in his eyes. Instead, there was a hint of sarcasm. Meng Tiangong was furious. He could tell at a glance that the young man had done it on purpose. "You're courting death." Meng Tiangong was furious. He wanted to take a big step forward and gallop toward Zhuowen. Unfortunately, an even stronger aura instantly crushed Meng Tiangong's body. Meng Tiangong did not dare to move. "Great Guardian Meng, my nephew is young and ignorant. He has only learned how to ride a dragon horse not long ago. It is pardonable that he couldn't control it well. I believe that as the great guardian of Dark Rock City, you won't mind such a small matter." Mei Ying's cold voice sounded. Meng Tiangong calmed down. He knew that now was not the time to fall out with this group of people. "City Lord Mei Ying, you must be joking. Your nephew is innocent, and I like it very much. It was my honor to be able to play with him just now," Meng Tiangong said hypocritically. Although Meng Tiangong said that he had already sentenced Zhuowen to death in his heart, a mere eternal overlord, and dared to play with him. If he had the chance, he would definitely let this person die a horrible death. "City Lord Mei Ying, follow me to the city Lord Mansion now. Our city lord is waiting for you," Meng Tiangong said with a smile. "You lead the way." Mei Ying nodded with a haughty expression. This made Meng Tiangong very unhappy. "Auntie, Dark Rock City is much more fun than Hongxian Divine City. I'll take a look around. You guys can talk business." Zhuo Wen, who was riding a dragon horse not far away, suddenly waved at Mei Ying and happily rode away on his dragon horse. "Zhuowen, come back!" Mei Ying's pretty face changed slightly. She could not help but shout. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's figure was already far away, and he did not hear her at all. "This kid is really too playful. Great Guardian Meng, I'm a little worried about my nephew's safety. He doesn't have much experience, so—" Mei Ying said worriedly. Meng Tiangong immediately patted his chest and said, "City Lord Mei Ying, don't worry. I'll send 2 experts to follow my nephew. I won't let him come to any harm. Leave it to me." "Then I'll have to trouble you, Great Guardian Meng," Mei Ying said gratefully. "It's just a small matter." Meng Tiangong chuckled, but his eyes were filled with coldness. This time, he finally found an opportunity. He would indeed send 2 experts. Chapter 3158. Silk Pants in the Dark Rock Divine City. A figure rode on a dragon horse and galloped through the streets at lightning speed. attracting the attention of many residents. However, most of them looked at the figure in surprise before retracting their gazes. There were many rules in the Dark Rock Divine City. Those who dared to ride on a dragon horse in such an arrogant manner were either people of high status or people without brains. They couldn't afford to offend the former, while the latter would be dealt with by the enforcers of the Divine City. The arrogant figure riding on a dragon horse was naturally Zhuowen. Before entering the Dark Rock Divine City, Zhuowen had already discussed with Mei Ying about their strategy. The two of them agreed that the only way to enter the Dark Rock Divine City was for Zhuowen to decipher all the formations and restrictions in the Divine City. However, the formation bases of the Divine City's formations were scattered all over the Divine City. This also meant that if Zhuowen wanted to decipher all the formations in the city, he would have to find all the formation bases in the Divine City. In order to achieve this goal, Zhuowen decided to disguise himself as Mei Ying's mischievous nephew. An ignorant young man would easily avoid Meng Tiangan and the rest's suspicions. This would also create time and opportunity for Zhuowen to find the formation bases. Zhuowen rode on the dragon horse and galloped through the bustling streets. Soon, they entered a secluded alley. This alley wasn't eye-catching and was rather secluded. The alley was pitch black, and one could even smell the stench coming from the alley. Zhuowen jumped off the dragon horse and led it into the alley. The moment Zhuowen entered the Dark Rock Divine City, he had already roughly observed the formations in the Divine City. He had to admit that the formations in the Dark Rock Divine City were more powerful and complicated than the Hongxian Divine City. On the surface, Zhuowen could see that there were 12 Genesis grade formations, and that was only on the surface. If he were to explore deeper, he would only discover more formations. Fortunately, there weren't any creation grade formations in the Divine City. Zhuowen could decipher them, but it would take more time. After all, he had just become a heaven-piercing formation god master not long ago, and his foundation had not yet stabilized. Once he had completely stabilized himself, it would be a piece of cake for him to set up a Destiny-level Grand Array. The reason why Zhuowen had stopped in this inconspicuous alley was because there was a large formations foundation in this alley. The surface area of Dark Rock Divine City was huge. In order to set up an array that covered the entire Divine City, there had to be many array bases scattered all over the Divine City. This alley was one of them. The alley was filled with smelly trash. Zhuowen's expression did not change as he came to the end of the alley. He stretched out his right hand and gently placed it on the flat and slightly dirty ground at the end of the alley. Immediately after, a rune with a diameter of 3 meters appeared on the ground. This was the array base. Zhuowen summoned the 9x9 81 Beast Bones array disc with his right hand and performed a hand seal. The Beast Bone formation discs were lined up in an orderly manner in front of Zhuowen. Magical waves of energy surged out from the Beast Bone formation discs, pouring into the spell formation on the ground. Instantly, the spell formation emitted a light with a very high frequency, as though it was being disturbed by something. The unstable light gradually dissipated, and the spell formation returned to its normal state. However, there was a trace of an unusual red light hidden within the spell formation. This red light was like a ticking time bomb. It was attached to the spell formation and seemed like it would explode at any time. After doing all this, Zhuowen led the dragon horse out of the alley. He did not destroy the spell formation hidden in the depths of the alley. Instead, he used his own formation, Dao, to modify the spell formation. When the spell formation was activated, the red light hidden within the spell formation would be like maggots in a tarsal bone, dyeing the entire spell formation blood red. At that moment, the spell formation would be under Zhuowen's control. Of course, there was another reason why he did not destroy the spell formation. That was, if the spell formation was destroyed, the formation godmaster who set up the spell formation would definitely notice it. Doing so would alert the enemy. After walking out of the alley, Zhuowen saw 2 figures blocking his path. They were 2 men in black robes. Both of them were not young. They looked like they were in their 30s. One of them, a middle-aged man with a scar on his face, looked very serious. He looked coldly at Zhuowen and said, "Excuse me, are you young Master Zhuowen?" Zhuowen glanced at the two men casually. He guessed that they were sent by Meng Tiangong. "Yes. Who are you two? How do you know my name?" Zhuowen asked even though he knew the answer. The middle-aged man with a scar on his face cupped his hands respectfully at Zhuowen and said in a deep voice, "I'm Fu Qimai. This is Lu Jingyi. We were sent by Guardian Meng to protect you, young Master Zhuowen." Zhuowen looked surprised. He asked somewhat innocently, "Who is Guardian Meng? Are you talking about the trash that was trampled under my longest foot? He's so kind to send people to protect me." Fu Qimai and Lu Jingyi's expressions turned ugly. Fu Qimai said in a deep voice, "Young Master Zhuowen, you better watch your words. Guardian Meng is the guardian of Dark Rock Divine City. He was magnanimous and didn't bother with you over such a small matter. Otherwise—" Fu Qimai snorted coldly at this point. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. Fu Qimai dared to show murderous intent toward him. It seemed like he had guessed correctly. Meng Tiangong had sent these two men with ulterior motives. Their cultivation levels were not bad. They were both early-stage Genesis lords. However, in Zhuowen's opinion, the two of them together were not enough to deal with him. Otherwise, what? Is he going to kill me? I'm the nephew of the Hongxian Divine City's city lord. Does he have the guts to do that? Also, the two of you are just his two dogs. Do you have the guts to do that? Zhuowen sneered. "Young Master Zhuowen, I know you have a noble status. However, you have to know that you are not in Hongxian Divine City. You are in Dark Rock Divine City. I think you should restrain yourself." Fu Qimai's tone turned dark and cold. He and Lu Jingyi exchanged a glance. Soon after, the two of them stood in front and behind Zhuowen. What is the meaning of this? Zhuowen showed a trace of panic. However, he quickly pretended to be calm and said, "I want to see my aunt. Hurry up and bring me there. If my aunt doesn't see me, the two of you will die a horrible death." In the eyes of Fu Qimai and Lu Jingyi, Zhuowen's tone was one of fear. He was definitely afraid and couldn't make up his mind. A trace of disdain appeared in their eyes. In their eyes, Zhuowen was a complete good-for-nothing. He was just relying on the fact that he had the city lord's aunt to throw his weight around in front of them. They looked down on good-for-nothings like him. "Nothing. We just think that young Master Zhuowen is too noisy. We want to make you quiet." Chapter 3159. Zish Xinhan Fu Qimai's right hand was filled with terrifying lightning, making crackling sounds. Boom! Fu Qimai's right palm landed on Zhuowen's face with a dull thud. Fu Qimai laughed heartily. However, he soon realized that something was amiss. His right hand had smashed into Zhuowen's face. Zhuowen should have been sent flying. However, Zhuowen's feet seemed to be rooted to the ground as he stood, still like a mountain. Fu Qimai also realized that his right hand was hurting. It was as if his right palm had landed on a solid rock instead of a person's face. Fu Qimai removed his right hand and was horrified to find that Zhuowen was staring at him coldly with his eyes wide open. His eyes were filled with coldness and killing intent, as if he was looking at a dead man. Thump! 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 Fu Qimai could not help but retreat as he looked at Zhuowen in disbelief. What was going on? He had used all his strength to hit Zhou Donghuang's face. Zhou Donghuang was not injured at all. Everything was too strange. Fu Qimai felt a chill run up his spine from the soles of his feet to his head, and he shuddered all over. Retreat! An unprecedented sense of danger filled Fu Qimai's mind as he instinctively retreated. Zhuowen's body was emitting a sparkling light. His playboy aura was completely replaced by a domineering aura. "Do you have the right to retreat without my permission?" Zhuowen's voice was domineering and sarcastic. He stomped his right foot and appeared in front of Fu Qimai as if he had teleported. So fast! Fu Chimai's pupils constricted. Zhuowen was so fast that he could not see him clearly. Boom! When Fu Chimai realized that Zhuowen was right in front of him, the latter's fist was already inches away from him. It landed on his chest and abdomen. Fu Chimai spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. His bones were all shattered, and he was in so much pain that he couldn't even move. Zhuowen's eyes were calm. His Pangu's sacred body was so powerful that the cultivators of the land of creation were almost no different from ants in front of him. Lu Jingyi was stunned. He still hadn't recovered from his shock. He couldn't figure it out. Zhuowen was just Mei Ying's foppish nephew and an eternal overlord. No matter how he looked at it, he was just a piece of trash that they could casually take down. But now the trash in their eyes had turned the tables and suddenly exploded with such terrifying power, crippling Fu Chimai with one punch. Lu Jingyi regained his senses and fled without hesitation. But no matter how fast he was, he couldn't be faster than Zhuowen. Before Lu Jingyi could even take a few steps back, Zhuowen had already caught up to him. Zhuowen's fist landed on his spine. An ear-piercing cracking sound rang out as Lu Jingyi's spine was smashed into powder by a tremendous force. He fell to the ground, the intense pain causing him to faint. "Who the hell are you?" Fu Chimai asked in a hoarse voice as he lay paralyzed on the ground, looking at Zhuowen in horror. Fu Chimai wasn't a fool. After seeing Zhuowen cripple the two of them so easily, he knew that this so-called foppish son in front of him was just a disguise. But why did he pretend to be a foppish son and leave Mei Ying and the others? Of course! This thought only flashed through Fu Chimai's mind. The only thing he was worried about now was his own life. He looked at Zhuowen expectantly and said, "Young Master Zhuowen, as long as you let me go, I won't say anything. I'll keep this a secret for you." Zhuowen looked at Fu Chimai silently and said indifferently, "Are you done with your nonsense?" Fu Chimai was stunned. The moment he was stunned, Zhuowen waved his sleeve and a ball of divine fire enveloped Fu Chimai. Fu Chimai didn't even have time to groan before he was burned to ashes by the divine fire. Zhuowen found another ball of divine fire and disposed of the unconscious Lu Jingyi. Then he leaped onto the dragon horse and rushed out of the alley. He had to find all the array bases in Dark Rock Divine City as soon as possible. Otherwise, Mei Ying and the others might not be able to leave Dark Rock Divine City alive. While Zhuowen was galloping on the streets on the dragon horse, Mei Ying led Great Guardian Ing Jie and the youth from the dragon clan into the city lord's mansion. The 1,000,000 jade stones that Mei Ying had brought had all been taken away by Meng Tiangan's men. When they entered the spacious hall, Mei Ying realized that several tables had already been set up in the hall. On the table, there were fine wine, delicacies, and nectar. It was simply a sumptuous feast. Che Xinhan, the city lord of Dark Rock Divine City, sat on the main seat in the hall. His hair was long, and he exuded a dignified aura. In front of the main seat, 5 graceful foreign race beauties were dancing gracefully. It was a feast for the eyes. Other than the city lord, Che Xinhan, the tables below were basically filled with the upper echelons of Dark Rock Divine City. At a glance, Mei Ying saw Mei Su and Jiang Yi sitting cross-legged at the end of the table. Their eyes were glazed over. After Meng Tiangan led Mei Ying and the others into the hall, he went to the center of the hall and knelt on one knee in front of Zish Xinhan. City Lord Mei Ying is here," Meng Tiangan said in a loud voice. Zish Xinhan looked satisfied. He laughed and said, "Great Guardian Meng, you have done well. You will be heavily rewarded this time. However, you should take a seat below first. I will entertain City Lord Mei Ying." Meng Tiangan cupped his fists and retreated to a table below. He slowly sat down. Only then did Zish Xinhan's gaze fall on Mei Ying and the others. His eyes revealed a strange emotion as he said, "Mei Ying, after so many years, you are finally willing to come to Dark Rock Divine City again." Mei Ying coldly glanced at Zish Xinhan and ignored him. He went straight to the end of the table and walked to the side of Jiang Yi and Mei Su. Mei Su, Jiang Yi, are you two all right? Mei Ying shook the two of them and found that they were like wooden puppets. They did not respond at all. Zish Xinhan, what did you do to them? Mei Ying's beautiful face changed slightly. Her beautiful eyes looked angrily at the burly foreign race man on the main seat. Zish Xinhan elegantly raised his bronze wine cup and drank the wine in it in one gulp. Dong! The crisp sound of the cup hitting the table rang out. Zish Xinhan said indifferently, the two of them were too disobedient. In order to make them more obedient, I planted the soul-devouring parasite in them. Don't worry, their lives will not be in danger. Mei Ying suddenly stood up. The aura of the Lord of Skirich poured out in torrents. The entire hall was engulfed by the terrifying aura. The surrounding tables trembled violently and were overturned. The other people sitting at the tables all retreated in a sorry state. Chapter 3160. Marriage Alliance. You planted soul-devouring parasites in Mei Su and Jiang Yi? Mei Ying's eyes were filled with unconcealable, killing intent. She glared at Zish Xinhan, her powerful aura like a storm, growing more and more intense in the hall. Soul-devouring parasites were a kind of killing beast in the massacre heavenly domain, but they were very small and almost impossible to see with the naked eye. These killing beasts loved to devour cultivators' souls. Once a cultivator was unlucky enough to be targeted by a group of soul-devouring parasites, the chances of survival were very low. These soul-devouring parasites would rapidly invade a cultivator's soul through their 7 orifices. The more soul-devouring parasites there were, the faster the soul would be eroded. The reason why Mei Ying was so furious, aside from the terror of the soul-devouring parasites, was that it was very difficult to get rid of them. In the massacre heavenly domain, there were basically no cultivators who could get rid of the soul-devouring parasites. And those who were inflicted with the parasites could only take the corresponding elixir to suppress the parasite's actions. Meng Tiangan and the other higher-ups' expressions changed slightly as they retreated. They almost retreated to the edge of the hall, their faces pale. Meng Tiangan looked at Mei Ying with fear. He did not expect the latter to be so strong. Based on the aura Mei Ying was displaying, this woman's cultivation had at least reached the peak of the early stage of the heavenly domain realm, not far from the middle stage. After Zish Xinhan put down his wine cup, a vast aura that was not weaker than Mei Ying's poured out from his body like a tide. In just an instant, the terrifying aura released by Mei Ying was suppressed by Zish Xinhan's aura. Mei Ying's expression changed greatly. She looked at Zish Xinhan in disbelief and said, "You broke through?" The moment Zish Xinhan's aura erupted, Meng Tiangan and the others breathed a sigh of relief. They straightened their clothes, tidied up the table in front of them, and sat down again. Mei Ying was powerful, but they knew that their city lord had broken through the shackles in recent years and did not fear Mei Ying at all. Moreover, Mei Ying had stepped into Dark Rock City, their territory, which was filled with dense array formations and restrictions. If they were not careful, Mei Ying and everyone in Hongxian Divine City would die with just a word from Zish Xinhan. Zish Xinhan's eyes were filled with a strong sense of satisfaction as he said faintly, "Mei Ying, in the past it was always your cultivation that suppressed mine, but now the tables have turned. You probably didn't expect me to break through faster than you did. I can tell you clearly that even if I don't use the array formation of Dark Rock Divine City, the people of Hongxian Divine City won't be able to leave this place so easily without my permission. Mei Ying, you can only restrain yourself in front of me. Otherwise, you won't just be harming yourself. You'll be harming everyone in Hongxian Divine City." Mei Ying was trembling with anger, but there was nothing she could do. She could only restrain her aura. She was very clear that Zish Xinhan had already broken through to the middle heaven connecting master realm, and was stronger than her. She simply couldn't do anything to him. Seeing that Mei Ying had restrained his aura, Zish Xinhan revealed a satisfied look. He stretched out his slightly thick right hand and beckoned to Mei Ying, the strange look in his eyes becoming increasingly intense. Mei Ying, come to my side. We haven't seen each other for a long time. I really miss you. Although Zish Xinhan's voice was calm, the fiery look in his eyes revealed his current inner emotions. Meng Tiangan and the rest sat below, silent. They all knew that Zish Xinhan had once pursued Mei Ying. However, Mei Ying was simply too outstanding at that time, and her strength was also a head above Zish Xinhan's. Mei Ying naturally wouldn't fall for a man weaker than her, so she unceremoniously rejected Zish Xinhan. But now, Zish Xinhan's cultivation had surpassed Mei Ying's in one fell swoop. They all knew that Zish Xinhan intended to court Mei Ying again. They also knew that Zish Xinhan had gone through a lot of trouble to kidnap Mei Su and bring her to Dark Rock Divine City. The 1,000,000 jade stones were secondary. His main goal was to get Mei Ying to come over personally. Mei Ying avoided Zish Xinhan's fiery gaze. She was very clear about Zish Xinhan's feelings for her. However, she wasn't interested in Zish Xinhan at all, because what she saw in Zish Xinhan's eyes was undisguised possessiveness. She was very repulsed by such possessiveness. There's no need. I'll just sit here. Mei Ying declined Zish Xinhan's invitation. Instead, she sat beside Mei Su and Jiang Ye's table. Great Guardian Ying Jie and the Dragon Clan youth Harue followed closely beside Mei Ying and sat down at the table beside her. Zish Xinhan, you said before that you would let Mei Su and Jiang Ye go if I brought 1,000,000 jade stones here. Now that I've given you 1,000,000 jade stones, you should also fulfill your promise. Also, when you sent me the message, you didn't say that you would use the soul-devouring parasite on them. Now that you've used it on them, shouldn't you give me a reasonable explanation? Mei Ying sat down, and her expression calmed down. Just now, she had checked on Mei Su and Jiang Yi. Although they had been inflicted with the soul-devouring parasite, it wasn't that bad. Zish Xinhan should have only planted a small amount of the soul-devouring parasite on them. Zish Xinhan didn't mind Mei Ying's rejection. He put down his hand and said indifferently, Mei Ying, I'm a man of my word. Since I've promised you, I naturally won't go back on my words. I can return Mei Su and Jiang Yi to you. Moreover, I'll also let the people of Hongxian Divine City leave Dark Rock Divine City unharmed. Mei Ying suspected that she had heard wrongly. Zish Xinhan was so kind that he would let the people of Hongxian Divine City walk into a trap and enter Dark Rock Divine City. Mei Ying originally thought that Zish Xinhan wouldn't let them go so easily. However, Zish Xinhan had agreed to let them go so easily. This made Mei Ying feel incredulous. However, I have a condition. As long as you agree to this condition, Mei Ying, I'll return your 1,000,000 jade stones intact. I know that Hongxian Divine City is also lacking in jade stones. It's not easy for you to take out 1,000,000 jade stones. Zish Xinhan's right hand tapped on the table. His gaze was terrifyingly calm. Meng Tiangan and the others were seated below, motionless. Even the sound of their breathing could be heard. Mei Ying frowned slightly. She felt uneasy. She had a feeling that Zish Xinhan's condition wasn't a good thing. Zish Xinhan didn't care about the uneasy Mei Ying. He paused for a moment and looked at Mei Ying with a burning gaze. His voice was gentle as he said, The condition is that you and I are united by marriage. Our two divine cities will unite. Chapter 3161. Gu, when the entire hall was eerily silent. One could even hear a pin drop. Everyone in the hall looked at Zish Xinhan in shock. Aside from Mei Ying, all the higher-ups of Dark Rock City, including Meng Tiangan, were also in disbelief. Mei Ying found it unbelievable. She had never thought of marrying Zish Xinhan. Moreover, Zish Xinhan's marriage partner was herself. This shocked and repelled Mei Ying. Meng Tiangan and the others were shocked because Zish Xinhan had never mentioned the marriage to them. They only found out now that it was too sudden. There was no acceptance process. Mei, as long as you agree to my condition, everything will be fine. I've also thought about it. This is definitely a way to make everyone happy. There are 3 divine cities in the Slaughter Heavenly Realm, and only 2 of ours belong to the alien races. The Quiet Sun Divine City was built by the human race. To us, the human race is nothing but a lowly slave. What qualifications do they have to be on equal footing with us? If you and I work together, destroying the Quiet Sun Divine City will be a piece of cake. Zish Shinhan said patiently, unable to conceal the excitement in his voice. The city lord's words are wise. You are indeed a great strategist. If the Quiet Sun Divine City disappears, we will obtain even more jade stone resources. Meng Tiangon hurriedly chimed in. The others also raised their cups to Zish Shinhan. Zish Shinhan laughed, but his eyes were fixed on Mei Ying. Mei Ying, why aren't you saying anything? Am I wrong? Mei Ying's pretty face turned ugly. She remained silent. The fate of the people in Hongxian Divine City was in Zish Shinhan's hands. If she didn't answer well, it would be easy to anger Zish Shinhan. At that time, the people she brought along would suffer along with her. At this moment, Mei Ying couldn't help but think of Zhuowen. She didn't know if Zhuowen had solved the problem of Dark Rock City's great array. As long as the problem was solved, she wouldn't be in such a passive position. Although Zish Shinhan's cultivation had broken through to the mid-stage transcending Heaven Lord, his background wasn't very good. In the great desolate Heaven Domain, Ziju Shinhan's race could only be ranked below average, while Mei Ying was from one of the top 10 races, the 9-tailed fox race. The reason why the 10 great races were so famous in the great desolate Heaven Realm was naturally not because they were paper tigers. The innate divine powers of the 10 great races were all extremely terrifying. As a member of the 9-tailed fox clan, Mei Ying possessed a powerful soul ambush. Relying on this innate divine ability, Mei Ying and Ziju Xan Han's battle was not a problem at all. Now, Mei Ying was mainly wary of the array restrictions in Dark Rock Divine City. As long as these worries were removed, she would immediately get up and kill her way out. Haha, City Lord Mei Ying should be so happy that he couldn't speak. I even saw City Lord Mei Ying secretly laughing just now. A young man with fish scales on his face said with a chuckle from the seat below. This youth's cultivation was actually not weak. He was actually the same as Hao Rui, an early-stage Lord of Creation. After the young man with fish scales said this, he looked provocatively at the young man from the dragon race sitting next to Ingjie, his eyes full of disdain. The young man from the dragon race narrowed his eyes and felt a little angry. He naturally knew this young man with fish scales. He was the #1 genius of Dark Rock Divine City, Gowin. Dark Rock Divine City and Hongxian Divine City were originally competitors. The young man with fish scales was the #1 genius of Dark Rock Divine City, while the young man from the dragon race was the #1 genius of Hongxian Divine City. These 2 geniuses were often compared by others. However, although the 2 divine cities were competitors, they had never truly come into contact with each other. There were only small skirmishes. The young man with fish scales, Gowin, and the young man from the dragon race, Harue, were often compared by others, but the 2 had never fought head-on. As for who was stronger and who was weaker, it was only a guess by others. Gowin, who do you think you are? Our city, Lord's status, is honorable. Who are you to talk nonsense about him? The young man from the dragon race suddenly stood up. His eyes were like lightning as he looked at the young man with fish scales. His tone was very unfriendly. The young man with fish scales also stood up and looked provocatively at Harue. He shook his head and said, Harue, you are the #1 genius of Hongxian Divine City, aren't you? How can you be so immature like a child? I originally thought that you were an equal opponent, but now that I have finally met you, I feel that I was too naive. You are really not worthy of being my opponent." After saying this, Gu Wen shook his head, but the provocation in his eyes was extremely strong. Everyone present could see that Gu Wen was trying to goad Hao Rui into a fight, wanting to infuriate him. Sitting in the main seat, Zish Xinhan silently watched all of this, the corners of his mouth revealing a thought-provoking smile. He did not mention the condition to Mei Ying again. In his opinion, Mei Ying was completely under his control and could not escape. He also knew that Mei Ying would need some time to accept this condition, so he was happy to wait for Mei Ying's decision. Naturally, he could tell what the fish-scaled youth was thinking. Gwyn was a very warlike fellow, and he was extremely proud to the bone. Back then, when others compared him to Hao Rui and found that they were equally matched, Gwyn was furious. In Gwen's eyes, no one in the younger generation of the massacre firmament was his match. Whether it was the geniuses of Hong Xian Divine City or the human race's Quiet Sun Divine City, they could only be trampled under his feet. Zish Xinhan, indeed, felt that Gwen was very arrogant, but he knew that Gwen had the right to be arrogant. Although Gwen was not one of the 10 great races, his background was higher than his own. Most importantly, Gwen was a variant. In the primitive firmament, variants were filled with many variables. Some of the mutants had extremely weak potential, but some were extremely terrifying and powerful. And Gwen just so happened to be one of those extremely powerful variants. In Zish Xinhan's eyes, Gwen's talent and strength were completely comparable to the young geniuses of the 10 great races. Hao Rui was born of the dragon race and had decent talent, but Zish Xinhan knew that Hao Rui could only shine in the massacre firmament. But in the dragon race, Hao Rui's talent could only be considered average. There were many dragons with greater talent and strength than him. Wen's arrogance made him unhappy when others compared him to Hao Rui. In Wen's eyes, Hao Rui did not have the qualifications to be compared to him. This time, he tried to provoke Hao Rui into a fight to infuriate him. Wen's goal was achieved. Hao Rui was indeed infuriated by him. Mei Ying frowned as she looked at the arrogant Wen. She could not see Wen's race, but she was certain that he was not one of the 10 great races. Chapter 3162. A battle to the death. Hao Rui was so angry that his face turned red. He stared coldly at the youth with fish scales. He could also tell that the fish-scaled youth was not from one of the 10 great races. His background was far inferior to his. Although Hao Rui could only be considered an ordinary genius in the Dragon Clan, it was one of the 10 great races after all. He naturally had his own pride. Hao Rui also knew that many people were secretly comparing him to Dark Rock City's Gwen. But Hao Rui didn't care. He was very confident in himself and didn't think much of Gwen, as he saw it. So what if Gwen's cultivation was the same as his? In terms of background, Gwen was far inferior to him. With the same level of cultivation, his strength would definitely be far inferior. But now Jevin, whom he had never taken seriously before, actually showed disdain for him. This made Hao Rui feel insulted. "You're saying that I'm not worthy to be your opponent? Then do you dare to fight me?" Hao Rui was burning with anger. A powerful aura burst out from his body. His hair fluttered without any wind, and his battle intent surged. Gwen sneered. "Why wouldn't I dare? I was afraid that you would be a coward and not dare to fight with me. Now that you've come out to challenge me, it means that you're not as bad as I thought." Hao Rui was furious, but he still restrained himself and said coldly, "Let's fight. I'll let you know how laughable your arrogance is." "I'm looking forward to it," Gavin said with a faint smile. Mei Ying felt that something was amiss. He pulled Hao Rui and said, "Hao Rui, Gwen isn't simple. He was probably trying to goad you into action just now." Hao Rui said in a low voice, "City Lord, I naturally know that he's trying to goad me, but I couldn't take it anymore. Who does he think he is? He's not even one of the 10 great races. Yet he dares to look down on me like this? What qualifications does he have?" Mei Ying sighed. She didn't try to persuade Hao Rui anymore. Hao Rui was born in the dragon race and had always been proud at heart and haughty in manner. In Hongxian God City, the only people Hao Rui admired were her and Grand Guardian Ingjia. This was because she and Great Protector Ingjia were both members of the Nine-Tailed Fox clan, and were part of the same 10 great clans as Hao Rui. Other than the two of them, Hao Rui was completely unconvinced by the other experts in Hongxian God City, including Vice City Lord Jiangyi. It could be said that Hao Rui valued his race very much and was proud of his race. Gu Wen's background was clearly inferior to Hao Rui's. If Gu Wen didn't provoke him, Hao Rui wouldn't care at all. Mei Ying knew that with Hao Rui's character, he would not take this lying down. She was very clear about Hao Rui's strength. Regarding this battle, she felt that Hao Rui's chances of winning were much higher. But when she saw Gwen's calm gaze, she had a bad feeling. As for why she had such a feeling, she couldn't explain it. Lord City Lord, Gwen requests to fight Hao Rui. I hope that Lord City Lord will allow it. Gu Wen came to the center of the hall and knelt on one knee in front of Zish Xinhan, his expression respectful. Zizi Xinhan pretended to hesitate and said, Gu Wen, this Hao Rui isn't an ordinary genius. He's from the dragon race. You're too impulsive. I think we should just forget about it. Zish Xinhan's words made the indignant Hao Rui look a little better. He cupped his fists towards Zish Xinhan and said, City Lord Zish, Hao Rui isn't someone who doesn't know when to advance or retreat. If Brother Gwen doesn't want to fight, I won't pursue him relentlessly. However, Gwen needs to apologize to me for his previous rudeness. Zish Xinhan glanced at Hao Rui indifferently and didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Gwen and continued, Gwen, you should know what I mean. You can't be too heavy-handed. You can't kill him. Gwen nodded and said, City Lord, don't worry. Gwen has a sense of propriety. This Hao Rui is a guest after all. I won't let him lose too badly. Since that's the case, then I agree to your battle with Hao Rui. Zish Xinhan nodded and lazily leaned back in his seat. His right hand held a wine cup and gently fiddled with it. He ignored Hao Rui's ugly expression and looked at Mei Ying. City Lord Mei Ying, you shouldn't have any objections to Gwen and Hao Rui's battle, right? Mei Ying frowned. She felt that something was wrong. Gwen and Zish Xinhan were too confident, but she didn't know where their confidence came from. Hao Rui had the dragon race's bloodline and was undoubtedly much stronger than Gwen. If the two fought, Hao Rui would definitely win. However, Mei Ying could not make up his mind based on the expressions of the two men. City Lord, let's agree. Since this Gwen sincerely wants to embarrass me, I'll fulfill his wish. Hao Rui quickly asked for instructions. Mei Ying was helpless and could only nod. Since that's the case, then you fight with him. Speaking up to here, Mei Ying said to Zish Xinhan in a deep voice, I agree to this battle, but both sides must stop before going too far. Zish Xinhan smiled faintly. That's natural, but this hall is too small. Let's set up the arena outside the hall. It's spacious there. Zish Xinhan stood up and waved his hand. Everyone stood up and walked out of the hall. As the main characters of this battle, Gwen and Hao Rui were the first to leave the hall. Mei Ying led Mei Su and Jiangyi out of the hall. Zish Xinhan stood in the hallway outside the hall. Everyone else was standing around Zish Xinhan, silently looking at Gavin and Hao Rui in the hallway. The two walked out of the hall and landed on the open space, facing each other. The battle intent between them was strong. Gwen, since City Lord Mei Ying doesn't believe in her family's genius, then when you fight with Hao Rui, you must stop before going too far. Don't injure him, understand? Zish Xinhan clasped his hands behind his back, his voice loud and clear with a trace of ridicule. Hee, since City Lord Mei Ying asked for it, I will act appropriately. I'm just afraid that this Hao Rui won't be able to take a beating. I might not even use my strength, and he'll be defeated. That's so boring, but that's all I can do. Gwen shook his head, his voice full of ridicule. Hao Rui was so angry that his knuckles cracked. He coldly said, Why should we hold back when we fight? Let's fight to our heart's content. Life and death are up to the heavens. Hee hee, your city lord is worried about you. Life and death are up to the heavens? You're really giving advice after the fact. Don't worry, your city lord is worried about you, so I will naturally hold back. I won't be heavy-handed. Gawain mocked and ridiculed. How Rue's right foot suddenly stomped. He cupped his fists towards Maying and said, City Lord, please allow me to have a life and death battle with Gawain. Today, I must fight to my heart's content. How Rue looked at Maying expectantly. After being ridiculed and looked down on by Gawain, How Rue had a stomach full of anger. If he couldn't teach this Gawain a lesson, his heart would be sullen. Mei-ing was a little hesitant, but after seeing How Rue's expectant gaze, she finally nodded in agreement. Ha, you're really bold. Mei-ing, I have a whole new level of respect for you. Zish Shinhan approached Mei-ing, his voice magnetic and intimate. Mei-ing retreated a few steps, deliberately keeping a distance from Zish Shinhan. Zish Shinhan didn't mind. He looked at the two figures in the open space and said, Since it's a life and death battle, then there's no need for both sides to hold back. I'm a straightforward person and don't like to be wishy-washy.